All right, everybody. I think we're live. It always says we're going live and then we're live and then I don't know. And then look at it later. Yeah, we're live. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another lovely episode of the Bonanza podcast show YouTube stream. I have a guest today again, but before we get into that, I am going to read a quote as I put it up on the screen. It's the beauty of doing things live here. All right. So we got history is written by the victors, Niccolo Machiavelli, from 1469 to 1527, allegedly. So we're going to get into that because my guest today is none other than Dustin, aka Berserker Bear of Bushwacking History in Buffalo. What's going on, Dustin? How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me on, Brandon. I appreciate it. Humble.
Yeah, I've been a fan of your show for quite some time now, and I've been a fan of, like, I don't know, alternate history, I guess you could say, for as long as I knew it existed once I found out. And I've even before that was a fan of regular history. I've always liked to kind of know where I came from and, you know, the civilizations before us and all this stuff. But I think like a lot of people that are resonate with us, we come across this stuff and then we just find out there's layers and layers and different things. And you could do all this research. But what I like about your show and your channel is you do this stuff yourself. You go out right where you are. You're just like, you know what? I was put here in this part of the realm, so let me go investigate. And you get boots on the ground, which I really admire. And I love watching your videos, especially the videos where you go, like you did the one video where you had to park on the side of the road and then run across the grass and like through this stuff. And yeah, I felt like I was there with you. So it was really exciting.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. What got you into that?
Oh man, I've always had like an adventurous, I guess, nature, if you will, from like riding my bike back in the day down the bike path that I now research, or my rollerblades, or just getting out and away from the house. You know, like parents used to say, get out and don't come back till the street lights are on, type of deal. And I was always one to just go. I was the youngest of my crew growing up. I got a really solid group of buddies that we're still together and we still stay in touch. One of them lives in Canada. Another one's a police officer of the law. So we grew up very tight together in our neighborhood. And my older brother is a part of that. So, but I was the youngest, right? So I couldn't always catch up with them or keep up with them. And especially when we got a little bit older, I was a little bit separated. My brother was the oldest of that crew. So, I guess by virtue of just that being as it was, I was always had a little bit more of an adventurous spirit. I always had to do a little bit more to have the older fellas, like, pay attention to me aside from telling me to shut up, So yeah, I've always had that spirit. And, well, geez, a couple of years ago, just watching YouTube channels, honestly, it always comes back to the YouTube and stuff. And seeing these shows about ancient history and obviously the Tartaria mud flood keywords that come up. And I'm like, what is going on there? What's up with that? And people were showing the, architecture that was being called, or architecture with the Antiquitech on it. And it's being labeled Tartaria. And, it's a blanket term. And we'll get into that. But I started noticing that the city that I'm in, Buffalo, has a lot of the aspects that are being talked about in these channels, right? And me having, that adventurous spirit, also a proclivity towards history. Like I didn't go to school. Like I finished high school. I went for a little bit of college, ECC, city campus, a little bit of North Campus. Go figure that the city campus of ECC would be considered one of those Tartarian buildings, the old post office. But I didn't finish. Okay. Say dropped out, but I paid my loans back. So I think I did science, took a little bit of some astronomy classes like we were talking about, because I was head first into that. So I just liked watching History Channel growing up. I love animals. I'd always watch Discovery Channel, and those type of shows really intrigued me. So when I started seeing similar shows to that were parallel on YouTube, it sparked my interest. And I'm like, whoa, then, oh, I have these buildings here in Buffalo. Oh, wow. Some of them have these slanted bottoms. Why do some of them have first floor windows that go in? I've noticed that my whole life. And I always just thought it was to get light in. And they were addressing that. And they were calling it this thing called mud flood. And they were showing these diagrams of how a building looks like a regular building, but it's got a layer of mud. And they're saying how first floor is buried by a layer of mud. And I'm like, what's going on there? And then to build on it more, I guess we're describing the tenets of what is generally the mud flood. From there, you go, well, what would have caused that? Is it the foundational building of having to build a foundation? Is that how they build buildings? Or some people were saying it's just like inundation of mud, a mud flood. And I'm like, whoa, that sounds crazy. And on top of Tartaria being a catchy word, the architecture, a lot of stuff that was the phrases that were being thrown around of like impossible architecture. How could you build this building when it was being done with horse and buggy? So I started looking into that. Man, this is like 2 years ago. My channel has been around for about maybe 2.5 years, maybe now. So then I felt compelled to start going out. Something compelled me. Now, again, it was at the time where I was coming off of the astronomy thing. My daughter was already born. I had came back to my faith, Christian faith. So I felt the compulsion to share it, not just go out there and do what you were saying, which I thank you very much for like giving me the props on that, because not only do I think that that's super interesting, where I'm at now, it's like, if I think it's interesting, other people probably will think it's interesting, especially people that watch my show. So I felt compelled. I have fun when I get out there and do that. I feel alive. That place that you were referring to, I think it was one of the old places in Depew, where I had one of those little, you don't realize a lot of these places are hidden by these berms, like for like a railroad track, for example. They're like 25 feet up in the air, and then they go down. It's hard. Some of it's hard ground to cross, right? Overgrown stuff. A lot of it's boggy. There's a lot of pricker bushes, which I think is intentional.
I could see that.
But here's the deal, and this is where people might find it interesting. What I do is I take these old maps that I'll find on the Library of Congress, and that specific episode was a real fun one, because I'll triangulate. There's a real cool old water tower. Now, that's one of the underlying tones of what I do, is not just to work on the Terra, but Buffalo is situated at a place where all the Niagara River and the Niagara Strait, all the water that runs off, think about this, all the water that runs out of Lake Superior, Michigan, Erie, I'm thinking of another one, Huron, aside from Lake Ontario, all those other ones, all the water funnels through Niagara River, and it's fresh, flowing, pure water. It's very significant. Now, it's very mineral rich. It's one of the reasons why the dough, and that's what we don't just have the best pizza or best chicken wings in Buffalo. We do have the best pizza, and I'll debate on that one, because
how dare you?
Yeah, we have a lot of minerals.
I live near New Haven, sir. You could get like tomatoes thrown at you by the Italians for saying that. What do you get out of here? Yeah, we got the best beets. Beets. They don't even call it pizza. They call it beets.
Not the gumbaris, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
This guy over here. Huh? I love the Sopranos.
Exactly.
My buddy, who's a law enforcement officer, is Italian. His father straight off the boat from Sicily, a small town in Sicily called Montedoro. And what was the first thing he did? This is so funny. Real quick side story.
Yeah.
His father's right off the boat from Sicily. He was a welder by trade, retired as a welder locally here in Buffalo. Just a legend, one of the salt of the earth, straight up. When he was in the city in Buffalo, he took out all his grass and poured concrete, right? Goombody with the concrete, So what they eventually moved out and went out to into the suburbs, or not even suburbs, like rural Darien. That's another 10-minute ride outside of Buffalo. It's rural country. So they went out to Darien, and he built a huge for a garden, a vegetable garden, because that's what he would do, and that's what they did in Italy, Sicily, actually. I'm not sure where I was going with that. What were we just talking about?
You were saying how the Italians, how they act when they come over here, and your friend that was the cop.
Yeah, there was something more. We were on another point, though. I forget.
Before that, we were
talking
on
these tangents.
No, that's cool. When I was doing a show with my friend Rodney recently, he's like, it's what happens with smart people. He's like, they just build these creations in their head and they're describing them. Then they take a left and a right. And then they're like, where'd we go?
We were on a good one though, man. I was explaining something.
I know you're talking about going through like prickers and brambles and going over the stuff, and then all the water that filters in with the rich minerals. That's where we got lost. Rich minerals and pizza.
Good one. That's it. Yeah. So this area, I felt compelled to share it because it's really cool. Not only did I see these this similar research going on YouTube, I'm like, whoa, I have that here. I have the ambition to do it. And another component and another layer are the books that I have, because I have a lot of old books, like old academic books, not like novels. For example, for your listeners, if they want to look it up, I have one that I use a lot is, and this is kind of a synchronistic one here, The World by the Fireside. Pictures and Scenes from Far Off Lands by Mary and Elizabeth Kirby. Now, that's my last name.
Yeah, I was gonna say, wait a minute.
Yeah, and this is cool because it show. Now, here's the deal. This is like 1899. This doesn't even have a copyright in it, but you look it up online. I found 1892. But it talks about Patagonian giants as if it was a real thing. It describes the natural world. That's where I'm saying, like, well, so I opened these books that my grandpa has. I had some here. So the house that I'm in right now with my wife and I and my little daughter, who's 4, this is the house that my father grew up in, and my great grandma Ginny and my great grandma Frances grew up in. So there's a lot of history in this house, and I'm right now in the process of buying it. So throwing up to the man upstairs for me, because we're in that process. There were some books here in the basement scattered around, some up in the little crawl space attic that we have, and some were at my father's house, who's a couple blocks away from me. So one day I just had the ambition to get it all together and coalesce it, look through some books, and boy, did I have some gems. Not only novels, but these academic books like lesson plan, high school geography books that I use for my show. Now, I make a big point of that, and that's why I said there's layers to this. I felt compelled to do it because I was in the area that I am. I'm also honestly a 15-minute ride at the most away from Niagara Falls. Another very anomalous place that I have a lot more work to do. I was just recently in, shout out to my homie Rad Bear. Rad Bear's on the Beartaria Times app. He lives just outside of Rochester. I took a 2-hour ride out to Rochester a couple of days ago for a video that I'm working on now for work along the Erie Canal. I think that may have been here before. One of my hypotheses is New York State may have been Vinland. That's another branch of my research. I think the Vikings were down and through here in the Viking Age, taking fur pelts out of the interior of America and taking it back up and through Europe and trading it with the Byzantine East. That's one of my hypotheses. There's really no mainstream history on that, but that's what I'm doing. So I get out there and do it in the field work. So that not only is it a real important city, I think, for the confluence of land gravy, I forget the name of it, but ley line work, right? There's a lot of, it might even be on the Dragon Path from the Saint Michael, Archangel Michael. There's a Dragon Path ley line thing in England, and I have yet to line it up yet, but I think Buffalo was in that dragon. I did a show about it, or my dragon episode. There's a lecture, a gentleman called Franklin Lavoisier, who's a historic and a land geographer, like esoteric occultic history guy here in Buffalo. There's a lot of occultic history here too. It's crazy. So anyway, long story short, I'm getting long-winded here. I felt compelled to do that work, and the product of that, and what I do when I get out and I film it, I come back and I track it against old maps that I get from Library of Congress. I'll triangulate where it was and what it looks like and find it in that Depew video that you cited. Use my old book, see if I have anything to reference and pull forth and bring it out and present it. And that's a whole nother aspect of the work, is presenting it. I could research all I want, and I do. I always research. Presenting is a whole nother aspect, like you're talking about with Woodshop Bear, having to learn the process of doing that. So the past 2 years have not only been a crash course in like rehashing my history knowledge and going over all this books and the presentation aspect of it, learning OBS, what to use, all that. It's been quite interesting, and the feedback is amazing. Being able to be on a chat with you, the feedback that I get from my comments, man, it's awesome. Grateful for it all. literally just happy to be a part of it. If
Yeah.
anybody, if I can inspire one person to get out and do the field work, honestly, it's cliche, but it means so much to me. It really does.
Yeah. No, I totally hear you. I try to inspire people myself. I always tell people if they have some inkling of something what they want to do or create, it's like go out and do it, because you could sit around and research and sop up gravy all day and look at it, but it could become a form of like an escapism or even an addiction. And I think the key to is if you're actually doing something with it and you're presenting it out to the world. It's like the trivium. You have your grammar and your your logic, but then you have rhetoric at the end. And really, well, I mean, it could represent a million things, but one thing it represents is expressing what you've learned to people. And by that, you're actually helping them. You're helping them help themselves to get onto this stuff. And I love that. And that's another thing I was going to say about you and me and people like us that do this. We're kind of like Renaissance men, because we're not only are we doing the research, but we're finding a way, we don't have a publisher or an agent or somebody that's going to go out and do this, or a TV show we could report to. We have to do the research on these topics and then we report ourselves. So we're basically like the new media, and the support is really amazing, especially from the bear community. I've gotten a lot of support recently from my friend Awesome Austin from the Melodome. Those guys are great. And we get these audiences that overlap. And speaking of audiences, shout out to the chat. We got Bane Bear in there. What's up? GBB says, what's up, Moonbuggy? So, Slow-Mo Moonbuggy's in there. Shout out to Zeralath. Shout out to him. He's the one who actually put me on your channel, because sometimes I get focused on something and I'll look and I get blinders, and he was like, no, you got to check out bushwhacking. So I finally checked it out and I was hooked. Yeah, I went back and watched a bunch of your videos and then was in a bunch of the live videos that you did, which I think you do a great job with that, by the way, because it's hard to do a live show. And with me, I'm just, bullshitting basically, but you're actually putting on a presentation and then you're interacting with the chat as well. Yeah, so I think you do a great job with that. And I think that's why you have such a good following. And also, we can get into this too, but like you switched your positions a couple times and changed your whole point of view. So people know, just like fans of Owen Benjamin or whatever, we know that he's not trying to sell us something. He's just reporting what he sees as he sees it. And when he changes his mind, just like Ewar, for example, and Wooden Nickels, shout out to them. They were just on Crow. I still got to watch that, but I heard that they shouted you out from other sources too, not just
Definitely.
you. So yeah, it's great. And, but people like that can take an honest look and then they switch their position on things. I think that's super important, because like we were talking about before we started recording with the Q-tard stuff or whatever it is you get, like I was super into like that anarcho-capitalism stuff, and it's just this mindset that, yeah, they have a lot of good ideas, but there's other ways around it. And a lot of people in those communities, when they're confronted with some kind of truth, they just have all these automatic responses that they give to it. And it's like a blind spot that they have that they don't want to address. So when people address that blind spot and change their point of view, I really appreciate it. So yeah, good on you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. What led you, what was the first, because it's funny, because I came across your stuff right as I was also learning that the Tartaria thing probably wasn't exactly what they said, right? And then we find out a lot more since then. But I came across you right as you were having that. And I also remember seeing you on Instagram with the scaffolding, and you were showing how it's possible for people to build stuff. And, this is something I like to say too, because everyone's like, how did they build it back then? I'm like, because they didn't have TV, like they didn't have all these distractions. And I think people in this generation or time or whatever, they feel like reflection. They feel like we're somehow more advanced than these people, and they just can't picture. But I say, it's like back in the day when you used to have all these phone numbers memorized. Nobody would believe you now if you told the kid, you're like, I had like 100 phone numbers memorized. They'd be like, no, you didn't. It's just these abilities that we lose. And then, like I said, I was looking into your stuff and you showed these scaffoldings and all this, like the cranes and all that stuff. And it really blew my mind. And I was like, all right, another lie. Here we go. Another sacred cow that has to be slaughtered. I was pretty excited about it. Yeah. So what was that moment for you like, though? Like, what do you think did it for you?
It was a preponderance of stuff, yeah, starting to remember stuff that I seen on those like the Discovery Channel and History Channel. Like I literally would go back and find videos that channels that I've seen back in the day where I remember seeing them building, for example, a medieval castle, and they were using these crank wheels or tread wheel cranes, they're called, right, and scaffolding in the power of beasts, um, and other channels that were getting into it too, Wooden Nickels and AWAR, they kind of were doing the pivot at the same time. My name of my channel was Bushwacking Tartaria with Berserker Bear before. And I had to really think about that one. But when I did make the decision, it was just boom, do it. Well,
Yeah.
funny, but I want to say a shout out. Thank you, Zaralath, and for shouting me out to Brandon Bonanza and also Bane Bear. I recognize those two names for sure. I see Bane Bear up in the chat in the old world ones. So yeah, thanks again, guys, and good to see you. And then
Flocal.
Focal Bear, what up?
Yeah, he just came in too.
How you doing, buddy? Thanks for stopping by. And yeah, guys, shout out Brandon. Thanks again for having me on. So
yeah, totally.
the pivot was interesting. So it was like, yeah, that's another thing too. Like with me comparing against my old books, I'm a real big like terminology guy. I like I like words. I fancy myself a wordsmith. There's one of my teachers from back in the day who not only got me interested more so in movies and the direction of them. I wanted to be a director when I was a kid. I liken everything to movies. People might get tired of that stuff. I understand. I don't. I will never get tired of it. So it's part of the package. When you I don't know, when you like what I do, you're going to get a lot of movie references. And maybe it's a little bit tiresome, but I love it. There was one real smart teacher that I had back in the day that got me geared towards movie direction. And if you see it, my father too, but if you see it on screen, it's there for a reason. I got really into that idea, especially with the really good directors that are good with it, like obviously the Coppolas and Scorsese. But there's other ones that aren't as much talked about, like the ones from Asia, like Akira Kurosawa, who him with his scenery and his broad expanse of using old film and showing massive scenery, beautiful, just beautiful scenery scapes. One of my favorite movies is a subtitle movie called Ran by Akira Kurosawa. It's amazing. But he had a competition, or like gave us a what would you call it, an assignment where we had to go home for the weekend on Friday and come back with a really cool sounding word. Like whether it's for whatever reason, and for some reason the one that sticks out is the one that he used as an example, like debonair. It's a cool sounding word, and the one that I used first was scrupulous, because it's not only just it sounds cool. You know what I mean? So that's one thing that always stuck with me. That teacher was really cool. Mr. Felges, if you're still around, definitely made an impression. So yeah, anyway, movies, and then lexicon. And we can get into Tolkien with that, because Tolkien had a whole lexicon made up of his Middle Earth verse, right? Really into that. And Tartaria is a very interesting sounding name, right? So you get clicked on it, and I'm like, I never heard of that before. Obviously the mud flood too. So the pivot was it was me just discerning, you know what I mean? And the whole like calling. I have an architecture book here from my great grandmother, and it shows and it details I showed it actually a couple videos back. I detail all the pictures that show the different types of styles of architecture, whether it's Romanesque, whether it's Gothic, whether it's Moorish or German Gothic. I have all those delineations. So I started seeing people calling stuff that should be called Romanesque or German Gothic or Moorish, all Tartarian. And I'm like, whoa, wait, there's something going on here that doesn't really jive. And then the same thing with mud flood. There's street planning and city planning, so things can have runoff and everything. It doesn't necessarily mean there was one cataclysmic global or realm-wide inundation of mud. That was the beginning of it, the pivot, and then I just maintained on that. And I guess it was, you get hooked in, similar to like the whole Pew thing, what you were talking about. Tartaria sounds interesting. Mud flood sounds interesting. The whole reset thing. If you're interested in history and you think things don't add up, just quite add up, and you have a conspiratorial mind, what Ewar and Woody are hitting on really is starting to put things in perspective insofar as it's kind of a whitewashing. Not only that, if I were to engage with a professional historian to try to, for example, solicit information about the anomaly, about what I think about Erie Canal or Vikings, and I started talking about what they say in Tartaria or mud flood, they might never talk to me again or answer literally. That's what we're trying to say here with the pivot. If I'm presented with new information that goes against or shows me something that forces me to change my mind, I'm perfectly fine with doing that. And that's kind of the deal with the pivot, so much so that I literally dropped it from my name of my channel. So that's kind of where I'm at now. And it's not all about Tartaria. It's more than that. It's not all about mud flood. It's more than that. These cities look like they're ancient and they were here for a lot longer time in the history that we're giving. So it's not necessarily impossible architecture. They were doing crazy stuff back in the day. How was the Blue Mosque built? Okay. They were using scaffolding. They were using treadwheel cranes. What if there was more civilization here prior to Columbus? Like Basques, Phoenicians here, 1000 BC. There are historians out there that believe that. There are Norwegian historians that believe the Vikings went way further than just Nova Scotia. It doesn't make sense that they would just stop there. That leads into me thinking that the Vikings were here. Think of this. Picture the name Erie Canal with a small e, Erie Canal, or E-R-I-E, the last E, right? You just remove that one horizontal line and it's Eric. I think it may have been Eric Portage. They may have been that I believe in my hypothesis that the Vikings were here in the Viking Age and the Erie Canal may have been a navigable series of short or shallow traversable waterways that the Vikings were using as a roundabout around the Niagara Falls. That's the lynch point, because the front door into the interior was always the St. Lawrence, Ontario, and then you had to traverse Niagara Falls. If you go down a little bit further down the coast and get into New York Harbor, you can get into the Hudson. That's where Erie Canal meets. In my opinion, I think that may have been there in the Viking Age, or it was a series of waterways. And that's what I'm doing. I'm not just on my computer looking at it. I'm getting out there. Like I said, I was in Rochester 2 weeks ago. I went to 3 different places. I was in Holly, New York, Pittsford, and then Fairport. And I still putting together a video for that. And I'm going to present it as soon as I can. But yeah, it's more than just Tartaria. It's more than just mud flood. Way more. But that was, what? On a certain level, it got me back into it. It forced me to step my game up, if you will. Use my books. Get out in the field. Don't just research it and sit on it like a dragon.
Yeah.
Present it. You know what I mean? Share it. Get the feedback. I've gotten so much feedback from, dudes like yourself or people who, as a matter of fact, one of the books I have was given to me by a gentleman that contacted me through my YouTube channel. And he's a local used book dealer here in Buffalo.
Oh, wow.
Shout out to John Haran. Yeah, I met with him. I first met with him like last year. Very, very cool dude. Super interested in the research and what we do. He remembers having a paper route in my neighborhood when he was like 10. So he remembers how stuff looked. So that's the type of stuff that I like to promote. Get in your attic, your garages of your friends and your family that might want to get rid of some of these books. That's how I happened upon them. I went and got them from my dad's house. If I never would have looked at them, maybe I never would have known. And here's another thing too. Like sometimes I'll open a book and I'll see a similar thing, or the book is kind of related to what I do. And I'm like, oh, Grandpa, were you interested in what I was interested in, or am interested in? Like, were you interested in Tartaria too?
Yeah, right.
So yeah, I mean, I'm grateful for it all. I work from home with my family. My wife and I work at the same place. So I have the ability to be on the computer and doing my research while I work. That's another huge factor. I wish I had more time to do my research, but I'm grateful for what I do have. So
Yeah, I hear you. There's never enough time in a day. I think the most important thing that came out of Tartaria was the fact that it gained enough traction at the right time, so then the Bears can make it Beartaria. Because like you were saying, with the way that names sound, Beartaria just sounds great. And I don't know if it would have came along unless there was this Tartaria narrative that people were looking into. And most people, I think, in this community kind of have your point of view with it, because they are open to looking at truth and changing their mind. And then when you look at the work that Wood and Nichols and Ewar did to talk about just even the whole where this idea came from, like could it have been from China or like, you know, Russia? Like, why are they trying to claim dominance? But the whole overarching aspect I see with this and Q and all these other psyops, or whatever you want to call them, if you will, is that they have a big dose of victim narrative in there. You know, it's even like people that think that we're trapped in a realm and they're like getting our loosh. It's like, oh, there's a demiurge and he has us trapped and we're in our jail. It's like, yeah, that all, but that sounds like a lot of victim narrative to me. You know what I mean? Does that mean that you can't stop watching porn all day? Is that what you're trying to tell me? You have to get drunk and watch the pornos because, you know, it's all a trap anyway. And I started to, when I first came across that Tartaria might not be real, when I would listen to people talk about it, I picked that up immediately. I'm like, oh yeah, this is just, oh, it was a great civilization and now we got to live like slaves, and it's all because somebody came and wiped them out. I'm like, are you sure they didn't, you know, even if there was a Tartaria, maybe they got wiped out by porno and you know, their own addiction to comfort. But I digress. Speaking of all the books, the old books that you were talking about, there's this guy, I don't know if you've ever checked him out, but his name is Jason from that channel Archaics. And I know recently Owen said something about him and his record, and he has like, he's a sex offender, I guess. And he actually admits that. And I would say look into it for yourself, because the story that he tells, and he seems like a really genuine dude, but the story that he tells is crazy. It's like he was 17 and he like was in this life of crime, and he was with a friend stealing a car, and his friend had a gun and there was a girl in the car, and then crazy stuff happened. But then he told his friend, like he pulled over because he was like, I've never seen a side of this guy. Like he was talking about killing this lady or whatever, or girl. They were 17, she was 19. And then he said that he basically talked him into going into a gas station, his friend with the gun. He's like, yeah, go get us some hot dogs. And then when he did, he just drove right to a police station. And before that, he'd like broken out of juvie. You know, he was like not about doing that. He ran, he tells this whole story. But anyway, I always say, look at a person's message, you know, and try not to judge them. But anyway, some of the stuff I wanted to touch on, he was in a jail because of that. He was in jail. He made a deal for like 4 years or whatever, but then Mr. Bush became governor of Texas, and he made everybody do their whole, like they would all make deals like 4 years, 20 years, but you only do 4 or whatever. They made all these crazy deals, and then he came in and just made it all, no more deals, like even retroactively. So he found himself stuck in a jail, got in a lot of trouble at first, but then when he turned it around, because he was a really devout Christian, he just started reading all these old books that exist in the Texas prison system. And I even got it from another source that knows a lot about the Masons or whatever. They said that they would actually, in the 1800s, they would try to rehabilitate people. It wasn't like it was today. So they would put all these books in the prisons in the hopes that some of these people would read and, you know, turn their life around. And they never throw anything away in the Texas prisons. So all these books eventually made their way into the newer prisons, but most of them were in the basement, just like you were saying at your house. So he became a librarian. He just found all these books. Yeah. He found all these books in the basement of like the jails and all this stuff from the 1800s. And he just started to read all this stuff. And he found a lot of stuff they don't tell us about, but there's all these different patterns and all this stuff in it. It kind of led him to think it's a simulation, which I am more of a realm earth guy. And I think it's like a simulation, but the difference is it's not materialistic. You know, I'm like, that's where they get you. But anyway, so he talks about, though, giants, very interestingly, he talks about like giants. And there was this time called right before the flood. So the flood that you get in the Bible, it's also been in a lot of other works, you know, like ancient Sumerian works. Everybody talks about this flood. And he found that there's a lot of evidence for a deluge and a pre-Diluvian era of maybe a couple thousand years where we had this vapor canopy. All this water was in the mesosphere, and it was basically blocking out the sun. He said like during the day it would be purple, and there was different pressure because of it, and different oh, my cat's outside crying. I'm here in here. Anyway,
I
nice
can't even
interruptions
hear.
on the yeah.
I can't hear.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm surprised he's not jumping on me. But so there's all this water in the mesosphere. It's purple during the day, but at night you could see the moon and the stars like you're looking through a telescope. But it also made plants grow larger, trees, people, giants, and all these legends that we get about like the Titans and stuff. There was a lot more in the 1800s that they understood about it. And he's reading books from people that wrote books about people. There's like people that went to Library of Alexandria basically, and then wrote what they saw, and then people that wrote off of that. So he sees all the stuff. So it really is amazing to realize that a lot of this stuff is actually could be verified, like when we talk about giants or even just other civilizations, because he said it looks like there's some kind of reset that goes on. But it's not always worldwide. It's just in certain areas something happens, and there's some kind of reset that comes in. So I think it's very interesting, especially in Buffalo. And I live in near New Haven, Connecticut, and there's some really interesting stuff when you're looking at it with new eyes.
Yeah, I'll
So
bet.
yeah. And I also wanted to give some
Connecticut.
shout outs to the chat really quick. El Jupitor said, I saw some interesting buildings in Chicago on my way to Bearfest. Shout out to her, Lore. And couldn't stop noticing all the lions. Age of Leo. Well, lions are a giant symbol. It's like the royalty loves it because this lions never sleep. Their eyes are always open. They represent strength and power and all this stuff. So you're going to get lions everywhere. And yeah, especially some Age of Leo stuff. I could see that. GBB said my grandpa's in Rochester. And then FloCal says, are there any movies that reference Tartaria or something like it?
Yeah, I would. Well, one that I would right off the bat. There's one called. This is really fantastical, but like you said earlier about the free energy and unicorns and butterflies, we'll get into that. It's called Mortal Engines, and they're like mobile, massive engines that move on the terra, on the land, and go after each other cities. Small, like a city is a moving mechanism of a massive, like a tank, and some are small. The small one is like a mining one, and it gets London is a moving one, and that was one of the more. It's not a really great movie, and the second half is really agenda-ish, but that's one that has Tartaria undertones. The first half is really, really gravy because it talks about the old tech, and it reminded me of Antiquitech. What's his name's in it? Agent Smith. He's in a lot of stuff, actually. That dude. What's his name? Come on. I should know that.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. The guy who played.
I get him confused with Guy Pearce. He played Elrond.
Yeah,
I was getting him confused with Guy Pearce a lot. Forget his name, but yeah, it's called Mortal Engines.
That'll probably tell us.
There you go. Yeah, I should know this, man. I'm a movie buff. But yeah, FloCal. Check out the first half of Mortal Engines is like mind blower. It's just the ideas that the concepts that it comes off with, huge, massive.
Have you ever shown a clip on your show about that?
Yeah. Okay. On some channel, dude, or on some episode. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, you mentioned Archaics. I haven't watched this stuff, but I heard of them, and that's cool if he's reading old books like that. Of course, I'm gonna say definitely do that. Like, it's better than just. Not saying that I don't use the internet. Obviously, I do, but I commend anybody who uses books and shares it. That's very cool. But the whole simulation thing, that's where I would differ on that notion, because and everybody has a past, right? I'll say that about that. Everybody has a past, and he addresses it. That's cool. I haven't watched this stuff though, but I have heard about them.
Okay,
and
yeah.
The books, yeah, I'm all about that. And but I'm not so much into the simulation thing, because like I'm into the. Well, you might had that term deterministic entity, or not entity. What you're talking about, woodshop there. I do believe in free will, and I think the simulation, determinism. There you go. I think simulation theory kind of butts up with the whole free will aspect of the Christian aspect of creation and the firmament. But there are some parallels there. Like when I've heard other people say and mention, refer to, because I've gotten comments on my videos about Archaics talking about old stuff and the vapor canopy. As a matter of fact, in my video I did with Transit Bear, where we were talking about one of the history channel, not History Channel. It reminded me of that, but through the biblical look of how the flood would, we're actually seeing things. I believe we're seeing evidence of the flood. Just like you said, they reference it in other cultures from Mesopotamia, even to cultures that are proto cultures in Australia. Something happened. And is it a reset of things? I don't want to get blasphemous, but is it possible that what we call as the rapture happens periodically? And is that what we're terming the reset? Is the mud flood a possible inversion of the true flood? I've thought of that before, because that's a thing. Why does everything look like it happened at sedimentation happened at one time? Because it's all even. I addressed that, or that show addressed it when I went over it with Transit Bear. Now, it looked through history and the geological history through the lens of it's the flood. They had, Christian geologists or faithful geologists looking at it through. Now, it was extremely refreshing to watch something like that, because we never got that as kids. It was always the History Channel about geology being from lava hitting a star. The atoms in our left hand could be different from the atoms in our right hand, or from a different star, from a protostar. And at that time, I'm like, oh yeah, I could see that being possible. Wow, Neil deGrasse. But here's where it boils down to for me. To use Neil deGrasse Tyson,
the bike thief with the answers. Oh, I love that.
Just think about it. Literally. I mean, put a wizard hat on the guy, and he's a wizard. I mean, I'm serious.
Yeah,
a wizard. He talks with his hand. And I was
Roman.
Even that Brian Cox dude from England, with his real unassuming English voice and real high, like this is a dark matter, and it's like it's almost like he's Merlin and Neil Snake in the Grass or whatever. I'm not personally judging these guys, and obviously we're taking shots at them because they're out in the public. They put themselves up there.
Totally. I mean, it's even possible they fully believe what they're saying. You know what I'm saying? I think that's how
the other level. That's the next. Yeah, I think that those are the best actors you can have, because they require no direction.
Yeah, and plus
very little energy.
They're speaking what they believe to be their truth, so people resonate it. Because if the truth is a frequency, you're going to get people that aren't really paying attention. Say they're only giving 30%, whereas people like us look at it, right? Some people just look at it a little bit. So like, yeah, this guy's telling the truth. He's killing it out there.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, okay. What was that? I'll thread a needle from the vapor canopy to Tyson. The vapor canopy seems to me similar to what they say in the antediluvian world pre-flood, as like it never rained. Like there was always a constant flood. So I automatically made an association to that. Like that's one thing that is lost even to me, to think about that. Like it never rained. Everything was just given the water that it needed by the fog that receded during the day. Now, that's not to say that there weren't streams and stuff like that. How that happened, I don't know. I mean, that's the antediluvian world, pre-flood, super gravy. So I don't know, is the vapor canopy something similar to what is, the fog that's talked about in the antediluvian world? Now that with Tyson, the simulation, or what does he call it? The simulacrum. I've heard people,
simulacrum or something like that. Yeah.
I hear the guys on Chalk Body Outline talking about it. So I do get feedback. Those guys crack me up. I don't agree with everything, just like anything, right? This is really important to know. You don't have to agree with everything anybody says. And I grew up, like I told you about my crew, you know how many shots I took growing up? I got some thick skin. I can dish it out. I could also take it. Now with that, 100%. You don't have to agree with everybody. I mean, we're all adults here, and might be helpful for people to listening to this to hear, if you have to agree with everything somebody says, there's something you might have to take a step back and look at the bigger picture, or the 100,000 foot view. So that said, with the simulacrum or the simulation, they don't know what's going on in astrophysics or quantum theory. They can't mesh the two. Okay. That's the holy grail. And when Michio Kaku, I love how he just so blatantly and brashly says, oh, I'm a theoretical physicist. I don't need to go by the scientific process. What, bro? So, but you're making these constructs and saying that this to be a fact effectively, in how their rhetoric speaks, right? but that's another thing that brought me away from it. They would just literally create more questions than give answers. For example, smashing atoms together at the Large Hadron Collider.
Yeah.
They were supposed to find so much stuff and derive so much information when they found the Higgs boson that it was going to be, and they did, and nothing came of it. They found, oh, there's 13 more. It's like, oh, got to keep doing more questions, never any answers. They don't know what's going on. What they say makes up 75% of the known universe, dark energy. You ask Neil deGrasse Tyson what it is, he'll make a joke about it and say, I don't know, next question. He's literally done that before about gravity. So you got dark matter, you got dark energy constituting a large portion of what they say makes up the universe, yet they can't tell us what it is. All the experiments that they do and how they observe it, we don't have access to. Jim Bob makes a great point of that. It's at some Caltech University thing or whatever. You have to have a PhD to even be able to sign off to be able to allow somebody to use it. Is it string theory? That Carl Sagan put out like 30 years ago. What's going on with that? They also promote a simulation theory, like the universe could be a simulation. So with that, this is similar to what Awar and Woody were saying. Placating to the simulation, in my opinion, you're kind of placating a little bit to what they're pushing in modern science or modern astrophysics as far as simulation goes, because there is a portion of that field of astrophysics. Some of them think that it's all mathematics. Like Max, there's a theoretical physicist called Max Tegmark, and he's like a math guy. Now, for me, I look at math and my brain melts like melted red brick. My brain breaks when I see math, even simple math. I'm just not geared for it. Okay. But for example, that's just an example. He's one that thinks everything is made up of binary ones, even like stars, it's all math. Like that's, for me to think of it now, sounds insane. So they really can't explain it, but they tell us that we have to operate in the scaffolding that they provide for us off of those constructs, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we have the right, we don't have to prove anything. All we got to do is poke holes in their story and then say, and that's when you start looking at it like a magician's trick. They're trying to have us look up here instead of me looking at the curb in my street being like, wow, what's going on here? Yeah. It's almost like look here, not there, like a magician's trick of the highest order. And then I guess that's a really long-winded way to explain that I don't necessarily agree in the simulation theory, because then again, I believe we have free will under God in the firmament of creation. And I think that there is energy all around us that we can tap into, whether it's the Akashic record or the Holy Spirit. Some people are more inclined, I guess, to be able to be receptive to it than others, just like certain people have certain attributes in one field or another. But simulation is tough for me. I think it's a creation of a higher God, a benevolent God who loves us and gives us the choice between good and evil so that we may know it. We have to learn to pick ourselves back up. Because if we don't learn, we'll never be able to, progress.
Yeah.
Collectively, positively.
We need that free will for our growth, I believe. And
I believe, yeah.
Everything that the science community talks about, and this is something that I love to talk about, which is basically so globe Earth, flat Earth, if you think of it as a physical place, and simulation theory have one flaw in it, and that's materialism at the end of the day. Like if you think you're on a rock, or if you think you're in a computer, or any of these things, I think it's all falls under the umbrella of materialism, which was disproven really well in the late 1800s. They slayed that, but it's been resurrected. And the reason I think it's been resurrected is because materialism is a good mindset to keep a slave, and if you keep somebody just a slave to their own self is really what it is. A slave is just somebody who's a slave to like that voice in their head that tells them that you'll never be nothing and you got to do this. So then other people come along that are a lot smarter, and they're like, oh, I could just make these people my slaves because, as above, so below. So I describe it as a spiritual realm. And I always say, doesn't matter to me as long as you're living your life, according to, you could say the golden rule, you could say God's law, according to whatever it is you're doing unto others, you're doing this, living this lifestyle. Great. We could be great friends. You know, like Vox Day says, if you're not eating babies, you know, you're cool. We could be 90s friends, right? Like Owen Benjamin says. So
We have common ground.
yeah, common ground. And that's what's really important. And I believe in a society or whatever. And if you're going to build a community, but I love to ponder other stuff. And the realm theory, the realm earth theory, I guess I could say, it's, to me, it's a fun thing to talk about, but it's a mystery. I have no idea. I'm just going to be asking questions, you know, not making claims kind of thing. But I think so. If you look at, we're basically energy, and I know this is going to sound hippy dippy, but I feel like it's because the new age also co-ops words, similar like churchians will co-opt Christian, you know, ideas. And you're like, no, that's not, you know, and so I think that happens a lot too. But so I feel like we're energy. Like if you zoom in on your hand, you just see molecules and things spinning around and all this stuff. There's nothing really solid. They try to call it string theory or what they have all their fancy words for it, right? And I think that though what it is somehow we're energy, spirit energy, and we are having this physical experience. And when we're in this form or whatever, we are able to have free will, because a lot of people have said that angels or higher conscious entities, they don't have free will like we do. And I think that is our gift. We're put into this realm to experience free will to make choices, to do, you know, whatever we want. Basically, you could become, you know, look at Kanye West, you know, like that guy, he's just, you know, he's killing it in his world. But people are able to do that even if they lack the talent. If they just convince themselves they're the greatest rapper, people are going to be like, yeah, you're the greatest. But no, I joke. But I think that's really the whole point of this, is to have an experience where we could choose and go down maybe some dark paths, and then see that that's not what we really want to do, and have that inner knowing, and then use the feeling within us, which I feel is like the Holy Spirit or God talking to us, whatever it is. It's that connection to that, you know, you could frame it in any way depending on your belief system. And I feel that's once we start to cultivate that connection with our intuition or with that voice, then we start to truly walk our path, or your dharma, you could say, or the path of God. You know, that's really when we're doing that work. And it's because we went down the other roads and now we know for ourselves. And that's what I love about people who had addictions and stuff and turned it around. Like, big shout out to Grounded Extracts in Austin. They do the Melodome show, and Grounded Extracts is in there. A bunch of people are in there. I'll do that in a second. We'll do some shout outs. But because they've walked these paths, they know their weaknesses now become like superpowers to them. And they could kind of be a beacon of light for people around them. They can help other people help themselves heal. And they could just be, you know, like the next person. I don't want to say, I'm always so careful with my words. You know, I don't want to be like, they could be the next big shot or whatever, but they could be the next one that people look to, and they heal. And I feel that's really how you can change the world, because a lot of people are like, oh, everything's terrible, what are you going to do? But it's like, I feel like, you know, working on yourself, making yourself better, and then in turn, you could say it raises your vibration, and then people around you, they either raise with you or they just disappear to learn more lessons, I guess. But yeah, that's what I think about realm theory. That's kind of my thing. I just feel like right now we're having this physical experience, and we just can't really explain it because we're in it, you know.
Yeah,
We
it's like
can't be
using
an
the thing to
observer.
measure the thing. Can't
Yeah,
do that, right?
exactly. I say
That's
that
it.
about really quickly, I'll just say I say that about
Good.
you know, because no, you're good. So people will talk about the sheep and the normies and the them, and then they get into like, oh, are these people NPCs, which I think is dangerous, because that's one step away from saying, oh, now you could kill these people, you know. But I think the other thing about it is that where was I going? I got lost again.
The
Like
NPCs.
yeah, that's what threw me off. Well, I'll think of it anyway. I was gonna make one point or another, it'll come back to me. I know It happens. That's all right. We're live. I'll give a shout out to the chat and it'll come back to me. So we have
Yeah,
Bowler
I'm
Bear. I
trying to
saw in
think of
there.
it. What up, Bowler? Grounded extracts. He gets in with the old school research, old world research too. I see him up in the chats. Grounded extracts.
Oh yeah, for
Yeah.
shizzle. Caribe Root Carmen. She lives here in Connecticut. She's a bear. Shout out to her. How you doing?
Oh, the simulation. Or the realm Earth theory. You're good.
Yeah, I
That's what you're
remember I was
thinking.
talking about that, but there's something I was gonna say. I don't remember. I guess I could just free will. I know I was talking about that. It'll come back to me. That's how it always happens. If I forget about it, it'll come back.
Stop thinking
Shout
about
out
it,
to
right? Yeah.
Nigel in the chat, Andrew Paul. You guys are up in there killing it. They were making fun of paraplegic earlier. Chris, who's Quiet Sparky Bears, like, good thing we made this chat wheelchair accessible.
I got to get up on some coffee from Paraplegic Bear and Rebel Joe. I haven't. I got to get some Rebel Joe coffee also. Shout out to Rebel Joe coffee.
Yeah,
And
I
all
gotta
the
try that too. I know paraplegic's gonna freak out, but I'm usually an avid drinker.
Yeah, he's Paraplegic's a real good salesman. He's like, yeah, you need some coffee. I'm just gonna send you some.
Yeah. Oh,
like,
he's
sure,
yeah.
man.
He's like, yeah, he's got
He's
the
a
model
legend.
down. Like,
Yeah, he's
I
got
wish
the
there was a way for me to do that with my shows, just like make people watch
right?
it. Just send it to them and they have to watch it because you're getting coffee, you're gonna drink it, and then it's good.
Shout out to Paraplegic Coffee. Bowler Bear, what up, homie? He was Kangs. Flocal Bear, you said grounded extracts. Yeah, what's up, guys? Thanks for stopping by for Brandon.
Yeah, shout out to Bowler Bear.
Up.
He was hilarious in that promo for Bear Fest. I didn't get to go, but Sharon went, and I actually just went to a meetup yesterday in New Hampshire. And shout out to Ukrainian Bear. We drove up there together. He's a legend. And we had 4 hours there and back. We had excellent conversation the whole time. And then I met up with a bunch of different bears, and Camera Bear was there. And afterwards, we went out to eat. Listen to this story. So everybody else left. It was me, Ukrainian, Camera Bear, and family, which are awesome. And we decided to go get food because we both were on, like, he's come from Rhode Island. We were both had long drives. And so we go to this place, and there was no mention of bear in the name at all. It was like some kind of tavern or whatever and restaurant. And they have bears all over the place, which, okay, you have pictures of bears, but it's New Hampshire, whatever. We go inside and they have these like wooden signs that look like street signs. And one of them says Bonanza on it. And I was like, in Ukrainian's like, I've never even heard that word before your bear name. And he goes, now it's on the wall, Yeah, it was great. So what a good synchronicity that was. Great times too, hanging out with people. I think, if you're watching this and you haven't been to a bear meetup or, a meetup in your community, or whatever, do it. Make internet friends real is what I have to say, because it's, the internet is really a place where people can put on this persona, right? And when you're in front of a real person and in person, it's a much different experience, and you don't get a lot of gayness, I guess you could say, So, and you could see if a person's real. It's really cool. So I totally recommend it.
I recommend it as well. We went to a matter of fact, we should start one up again. That's how I met Rad Bear, who I do bushwhacking with in Rochester. Our first bear meetup in New York State. Was like it's 2 years ago now. Wow, a year and a half ago. Shout out Fire Marshal Bear, Don't Be Gay Bear, Dragon Bear, Rad Bear, Prosciutto Bear. They're all up on the Beartaria Times app. And I do bushwhacking with Rad Bear around Rochester. So yeah, I highly recommend that as well. And it doesn't always have to be in the bear community, like I mentioned and cited my good buddies earlier. We get up and have a barbecue every so often, and we keep our tight knit bond close, just getting together, family as well. So community, family, friends, keep them close, especially in these times, trying times, if you will. And the current zeitgeist being not even just online. Great point about getting out. That's like another aspect of my research, obviously, getting out, right? Not just being relegated to the keyboard. Getting out and getting fresh air and seeing your friends, because even still doing that, people aren't acting normal now. It's different. What's going on with the C word, the cooties going around, or the V that people are asking you about. It's
I call it an experimental medical serum.
Like that one. Yeah, or the jibba jabba ding dong or whatever,
I figured as a wordsmith you'd appreciate that.
Yeah, I like that. There you go. Some lexicon gravy right there. But yeah, not just the craziness that's online, it could be in your life. I've heard a lot of people say that, their family don't talk to them anymore, and grateful, God willing, that hasn't happened to me, but I know it's not lost on me that has happened to people in the past 2 years because of, we have that outlook of ladle half full, and we see things on the positive side. Our faith helps with that. Some people don't have that, so it's good to empathize a little bit. And that might be lost on us. We want to say, oh, just get over it, man. Some people don't have that. I get, extra gear, if you will, or that, I guess I say I'm hyper optimistic, right? Maybe to a fault. I say I realize that now,
Yeah,
because
I'm like
I don't,
that too. I hear you, man. Go ahead though.
for
Yeah.
real, yeah, but some people aren't like that, and I
Mhm.
that's one thing that I guess I've learned in the past 2 years is to be a little bit more tolerant, or like have more patience. I don't. My wife will concur. I don't have the most patience in certain aspects, In other things, I can just let, moss grow on my back. But
Yeah, yeah. I
like I
hear
let
you
the
exactly.
bigger things like fall off my back type of deal. I don't, but some small things I let really irk me. I've been working on that, right? And with what's going on, and we say the apocalypse, best apocalypse ever, to bring light to a dark situation, because that's kind of like the essence in the tone of Bertaria. We have a lot of like-minded. Obviously, our faith brings us together, or just the positive nature of our character in general, and the wanting to see other people like that. I've always had that nature. I've always been empathetic and empathic, if you will. Like you feel other people's emotions or whatever. So with that, I've always had a compassion for other people that might not be in my position. I might be better off than them. That's never been lost on me. So that's why it was so appealing to the bear community for being receptive and open like that. Other people might have the wrong impression about that, just because we fans of a comedian. I think people forget sometimes, like, he's a vulgar comedian. He just happens to have his faith. I know we like to make fun of George Carlin, obviously, and what he's been saying recently about it. Imagine if he was interactive with his following. And I'm not comparing Owen to George Carlin. Maybe I should say someone like Mitch Hedberg or something like that. What if they were
Yeah, there you
interactive with
go.
their community?
Yeah.
You get Owen. He's a fucking, excuse my language, he's a comedian. People
No,
hold him to
it's
a
all right, man.
standard because he has his faith, but it's an interesting dynamic. And you're going to
Mhm.
have trolls. I get it. Like I said, busting balls, you stir the pot a little bit, you see how somebody's going to react under duress and fire. Somebody acts like a little sissy, you know what I mean? Not to put it in terms of war, but you don't want to line up with that dude. Right. So there is a merit to the ball busting or whatever. And I guess I'm not sure how I was paralleling that to with his trolls. You're going to get the trolls. You know what I mean? Especially when you're in that status. So what I'd say about people who have their detractions to the Bears or whatever, or Big Bear and his comedy, he's a comedian. Imagine if Mitch Hedberg had an interactive community or whatever. That's what you'd get. And I'm grateful for it. So um, my life has been nothing but good in this horrible time, and a lot of that has to do with this community and what I've had interactions with you guys and everything. So what's bad about that? I'm not a stupid person. I could be ignorant at times, and we all step on our tail, right? The idea is not to stand on it. So
Yeah, no, 100%. And yeah, that I think what Owen outlined about gamma behavior really blew my mind. I am like a nerd when it comes to psychology, and I'm interested with that whole social sexual hierarchy that he has going on. My only thing with it is I think it's a reaction to the time we're in. I don't think it's like an inherent human thing always. I could see a lot of it, but I think it's what happens as a result of the way we're kind of raised to be slaves. I think that's how the males manifest and they get into these groups. And of course, some of this behavior would be displayed either way. But anyway, but the gamma thing is great because you see that feminine behavior. And, these trolls, a lot of them, they're just attracted to him because they want like a dad figure or something. And then when he turns out not to be that, then he has to change to fit their needs in their mind. It's really amazing. And I was talking to a friend about this yesterday. He's another guy I met through the bear community. Shout out to Joe. He lives in Germany. and he's from, he's born in New York, raised in Florida, and then went to the army, did stayed in Germany, met a really nice woman, so he lives there now. But we were talking about all this stuff with trolls, and Owen specifically, actually, and he was saying how a lot of this stuff people think it's like directed, but it could just be, and Owen's talked about this too, people are just evacuated, and so there's something, some kind of, you could call it the devil, you could call it like a higher consciousness being that's just on the dark side, you could call it what do the Buddhists call it? I don't remember, but anyway, you can call it whatever you want, but I think it's kind of some kind of possession, and it's a choice, though. At the end of the day, these people are choosing to evacuate, and they start to all align with their behavior, and then they get together. And also the whole thing with his ex comrades in Hollywood or whatever, they also, I could see why they would want to demonize him, but anyway, yeah, I think it's a really great community, and I'm glad to have found it, because I was listening to him on and off since about 2016. In my previous mindset, he didn't agree with everything I did, so I could still listen to him, but I wouldn't as much. That's just how I thought before. I was like, oh, and then he'd say something, and I'm like, oh, but if he knew, and I would think, oh, if he just knew, but don't you know? And so after 2020, though, I saw he was the only one that was still funny, right, and speaking the truth. And I was like, wow, I love this. So since then, I basically became a heavy watcher and more contributed, went to some bear meetups, sent some letters. I just sent a letter recently, and I really am starting to jive with all of it. Yeah. And I met Sharon. We did the Over Sharon show. Shout out to the Over Sharon show. And we recorded today with Chance Garton, I think is his last name. I'm so bad with these when I'm live. Yeah, Chance Garton, who has a pretty big following, and I really like what he said. Yeah, I think he had Owen on actually not too long ago, and it's amazing these people you meet, and it's because Sharon met Chance at the Bear Target Times Festival, and was like, "You got to come on my show," because I told her, I'm like, if you see people you want to have on, I'm like, just tell them you want to be on, like they're gonna love you, So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. We're starting to gain some steam here. I mean, I don't know if it'll last on YouTube, but I don't think we really get too bad, But even if we don't, we have other backup plans, and we have other places where we put the show, so we're not too worried about it. But yeah, check out the Over Sharon show if you haven't. I met her, and then I met a great group of bears. We did our own little meetup in Sedona back in the winter. A bunch of us like-minded people from all over the country, and it was great to make internet friends real. And I got to stay at my friend's homestead a few times, because he lives in South Carolina. So I drove there, stayed there for a night or two. Then me and him drove to meet other bears, and we eventually made it out to Colorado and stayed with a really good friend. Awesome. And then we went to Sedona and then came back, and I stayed at my friend's homestead again. It was great. Yeah, he had chickens. He has goats now. I helped him kind of with the pen a little bit, but he has goats, but then he had chickens and ducks and all kinds of stuff. So it was just a great experience to have people open their homes to you like that. So much. It's awesome. So make internet friends real is what we're trying to say.
Definitely. And if you have it, what's that saying? Meet old friends for the first time.
Yeah,
I love that, because when it's right. You could feel it. That connection when people real recognizes real. You know what I mean? You hit the ground running when you have that similarity. Or the connection through the community, or even faith, even with your faith, or just having that benevolent aspect about your being and your character.
Yeah,
other people recognize that, catch the vibe.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like most bears, some are Christians, some aren't, some are this, some are that, but I think we're all in that state of three men in a dark room feeling an elephant. We're just describing it differently, but we all have the same.
I agree. When I say that, it's just because that's my faith. I'm not making
I know. Yeah,
statement. Yeah, you get it.
Totally. I'd say to people, I'm like, as long as you're on that wavelength and you're not trying to sell me or judge me, and we're talking about all this stuff, we're already on the same vibration, however you want to put it, and that's what I like about Owen. And and I love how he slaughters those sacred cows. That's a really fun one. A shout out to Dustin in the chat. He said Mitch Hedberg sync from yesterday. Dustin Grant. He must have been at the
that guy's got a good name.
Yeah. Dustin, exactly.
Yeah. Does he know the meaning of the name?
I don't know. Do you know the meaning of the name, Dustin? What is it?
Let's put him on the spot.
Yeah, let's see.
I know it. Want to ask him?
Oh, of course I know. I asked him. Yeah. let's see if he. Well, I didn't ask him in the chat,
I
but
don't want to put
hopefully
him on
he's
the spot
listening.
because so it means, well, is it, let's give him, want to give him 33 seconds?
Polar Bear
Or
said crushing Anity. Sorry.
Bowler, my man. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's our faith. It's crushing Anity. That's what we believe in. We're all
that's another thing.
Crussians. We're all Crussians.
I say that I spell crush with a C, like a small C, capital R.
Oh yeah.
I'll use a V for a U every so often because I don't like to have dead Phoenician wizards try to tell me how to use my lexicon. That's a joke. But
how dare you? My grandfather's a dead Phoenician wizard. No, I'm just kidding. I almost said my dad. My dad's still alive.
I joke. But
Yeah,
the Phoenicians did create our alphabet. Say that 5 times fast. Okay, so Dustin, it's the definition valiant warrior, but the actual etymology is derived from Old Norse called Torsten, and from Old Norse that is derived from, or excuse me, Old English is Torsten, which is derived from Old Norse Thorsten, which means Thorstone. So Dustin literally means stone of Thor. That was my Twitter handle before I got suspended and lost my account. It was at Stone of Thor. I was doing some research there, but yeah, Dustin means valiant warrior, Stone of Thor. And that's my hair. So Berserker Bear is quite fitting because it is in with my nature, like I described earlier. What people may be like, why Berserker Bear? My great grandfather was born in Norway. My father did the blood test, the My Heritage, before I can advise him otherwise. And he pinged 50% from Scandinavia. We know it's Norway because our great grandfather Williamson was born in Oslo. So I do have it in the blood. I'm at least 25% Norwegian Scandinavian. The high school that my father went to, Riverside Vikings, JH Vikings Club. So I do have it in the blood, and I'm not just playing up to my nickname in the Bears. It is part of my my heritage, you know.
You know, it's crazy because what you said before about the Vikings here. What if that civilization they call the Vikings was here, and then they knew of some reset or something happened, so they retreated back to Norway, and then it was just coming back, you know.
Boom, that's a great insight there, Brandon, and I never even thought of it. What if it was like that? I believe there were, shout out to Bowler Bear, I believe that there was a black culture here, and there's a great YouTube channel that gets really deep into some really thick gravy. I was going to shout out another one too, but for the black we was Kangs, I always bust Bowler Bear's chops on this one, but there's gravy. It's UBTV. It's all the words or the letters, excuse me, capital UBTV, and he does the boule aspect of the brother history of what you would call the house brother culture, the black culture that was part of the aristocracy, but also used by them to do this whole civil rights movement. And when Big Bear talks about Martin Luther King was not what you think he was, without getting too triggering, and it seems like Malcolm was a little bit more based. This dude, UBTV, gets into that big time. Blows my mind. Also, he has great music. He's got some unique. You're a DJ. You'd appreciate that. One of his dudes puts together unique tunes, and they're awesome. It's a really good. Sometimes I shouldn't even say this, but maybe a little jealous because other people's productions are really good. You know, like, wow, that's awesome.
Must be nice.
But yeah, so there's accredited historians that think, like I said earlier, could have been the Basques or the Berbers from Northern Africa off the Barbary coast here, 1000 BC. If the Phoenicians were here, you know, that's that lineage tracks back to Mesopotamia, and that's where all the canals were made first initially. So was that being done here? Well, that's another aspect of what I do here is roads, row your boat. Row. Roads may have been canals.
They were trying to tell us in Tommy Boy. There's a movie reference for it. Was it or Black
Good
Sheep?
One. That's hilarious.
Roads.
It's another good one, man. Oh, dude.
Yeah, I'm a movie. I don't watch them really anymore, but trust me, I've watched my share of movies. So yeah, I'll get all the references.
Oh goodness, man. That's one of the things I do. So yeah, I have my IG. I'll do research, or I'll show preview for when I got a video coming up, or I'll put out a really cool
Oh yeah.
clip of an old movie, and some people might be like, what the fuck is this? And that's cool. It gets you, if anything, I just want to get you thinking. Or if like Big Bear's hitting on a theme, sometimes I'll dovetail off of that, something that I think. And I always think, again, if maybe to a fault, I always think in movie references, man, trying to get away from that, but it's sort of what I do. I'm thinking about doing another, if I have the time. I do have a backup YouTube channel that I keep on the ice, like doing like game truth drops in games and movies, maybe.
Yeah.
Kind of sort of. I have ambition to do that, and I think I have the toolbox to do it.
People
I
love
just
that
don't
too.
have the time. Yeah, I could
Yeah.
do a really good job too. I think I've been learning, but I honestly, bro, I would stud my YouTube channel out more. Family man first, right? That's it's what I'm about. Family. We're trying to have another one. I'm buying this house, creating a home for my family, and I work full time. So I provide for my family, right? Both my wife and I work, but I'm grateful that we both work from home, and we will be indefinitely. We got the word from our work about 2 months ago, actually,
Oh
that
wow.
it's yeah, we, not like we were on eggshells or anything, but we didn't have 100% guarantee, and they would always use that like, we might be coming back in the office, but now he sold it. We still have a small little office it's actually in an old world Tartarian building downtown.
Of
Old
course
red
it
brick.
is.
Beautiful building. It was the old turn of the century box making, owned by a woman, actually. I forget her name, but old red brick industrial. And then it was revamped into like half residential, half commercial. And my company had the whole fourth floor for commercial. And our owner made it real nice. It was beautiful to begin with because it had the old industrial look with the modern office, like kind of like a juxtaposition, like all open pipes and ceiling, concrete open, and like red brick in the office, but newer office. Very cool. So I know it was hard for him to get rid of it because he really personalized it, but he probably got a pretty penny for it. So
Oh yeah, especially right now.
like a stone's throw from downtown. Yeah, it's Buffalo. It's not a major metropolitan city, more like a big village, but it is a city, and we have a lot going for us because of that. I think. However, this will turn out with the whole oligarchy and technocratic cities, Buffalo could be prime for an example of that or not, because we're a border city, and you have to maintain some semblance of, in my opinion, we're right next to Canada. But we're up and coming, and I think it's on the low. That's another undertone of what I do, is that we have a saying here: keep Buffalo a secret. Now that's kind of underlined to reference the song here, John Fogerty, Rock and Roll Girls. I always say this: he'd like to shuffle off to Buffalo, sit by the lake and soak in the sun. It's beautiful here, man. It's not like a paradise. We put a sewage treatment plant right on the river. Canada's right across the way. We have a
Ugh.
throughway. Yeah, well, here's the deal. I mean, let me try. They're opening up the border now. You don't have to have the jibba dabba dibba doo
Oh
doo.
wow.
That's big because I haven't been over there. So effectively, my stomping ground will double because I can get over there. But dude, here's the deal. One of the most beautiful drives that you could take in Buffalo is on the Canadian side. From you start at the Peace Bridge and you take a slow drive along the parkway, beautiful parkway with beautiful homes along the Niagara River. And you're looking at the American side that has the throughway, that has the sewage treatment plant, that has a water treatment plant, that has a coal burning massive industrial plant called the Huntley plant. So it's a beautiful drive, but you're looking at the American side, who may not have made the best city planning decisions back in the day, but it's still beautiful, and we still have that running water. And of all the northeastern industrial Rust Belt cities, sorry to all y'all who are in the chat from those cities, but Buffalo is the only one that has a true sunset over the water.
Oh yeah.
And that's very special. And where you can see that in the Erie Basin Marina, there's actually a Stonehenge where I think that there was an old star fort, maybe allegedly could it be. Another aspect of what I do. But yeah, so we have a 200-mile narrow view of Lake Erie, and that affords us, even New York City doesn't have it, Philadelphia doesn't have it, Boston doesn't have it, Detroit doesn't have it, Buffalo has a true sunset over the water because of the way that we're situated on the eastern edge of Lake Erie. So there you go.
Yeah, I think you get to see the curve really well at sunset. No, I think that's amazing, especially with the Star Fort, because I remember watching or seeing from your work that there is one in Canada across the way.
Yes, and you
so,
always have two forts. There's always two forts, and the Dutch were here. The Dutch are the ones that purchased. This is another crazy gravy here. I got to get in touch with the natives, man. You know, the native elders for some history, although we understand that they're a little wary when the white man comes asking questions, right?
yeah.
As long as we don't have blankets in our hand. But here's the deal. There's a lot of native history here and a lot of native mounds, right? And in order to get further information, I might have to solicit professionally some native elders, honestly, because the Dutch are this is where the anomalies come from. I'm gonna lay it a little bit more gravy here. So the Western New York is everything in New York State that's west of the Genesee River. That's also called, esoterically, it's called the Western Door, because it used to be the door into the Iroquois Nation or the Seneca Nation. From east, you come in, you pass the Genesee River, now you're in the Western Door. It's also called the Dragon Path. Lake Erie Canal has something to do with that. Also, there is a dragon in Iroquois mythology called the Oniare. It's supposed to be a serpent dragon of the Niagara River. Super gravy. So that said, the Western Door, okay? That land tract was purchased by a company called the Phelps Gorham Purchase and the Holland Land Company. Now, they were Dutch businessmen. Your listeners, I urge them to look this up if you have a proclivity to history here, because this is where the natives know this information, and we can literally pull out some very critical, crucial questions for like stuff that I do. Now, that being said, Western Door, everything west of the Genesee River. We are one of the only places in the entire country that has the stamp from the Holland Land Company on the household deeds of all the deeds of the houses in this area. That's a huge area. It incorporates a lot of counties, not just the city of Buffalo. It incorporates 13, 14 counties. All the houses in that area, you can track back. And this is super interesting because I mentioned it to my dad. He's like, oh yeah, I remember that. My uncle, my wife's uncle, is a inspector for one of the townships. And he's like, yeah, I know that. I'm like, can I get a picture of it? I'd like to show it. Anyway, it was called the Phelps Gorham Purchase by the Holland Land Company from the natives, from the Iroquois, right? But the Holland Land Company is labeled and delineated on Wikipedia as a syndicate. That is not a legal entity. How could they have purchased the land? Now they say, well, the Iroquois and the Seneca nations, they were all warring at the time with each other. So whose land was it anyway? Oh, you get the whole top hat grabbler thing. Here's my question, and I'll pose it to your listeners. If said company is indicated as a syndicate, does that make the purchase legally valid? In my opinion, I'm not a legal guy. I'm not a land tract guy or nothing like that. I would say, in my very amateur opinion on that subject, no, but I don't know. It is a syndicate, and they did purchase it, and that's where everything else is derived from: land rights and land surveying and all that. And then you can talk about Ellicott and the radial patterns that they allegedly made, but I think we're here. I think the natives will have information about that, and I think they do know that, and I think that maybe they're laying in wait to pull that card, if you will. And I'll sit back like this, man. That might put somebody on edge, being like this whole. I would just be like this, That's why I would sit back and watch, because I would be one, not necessarily to help them, but I'm trying to research their history, so maybe they would see me, I don't know, put it in these terms, like an ally. So I got that stuff going for me. It just keeps on adding up, and the two sleuth list gets so long. It's nuts, but it's just more work for me to do, I guess, to look at it like ladle half full.
Yeah, no, I think that's great though.
Yeah.
And it's
so the natives, like you said, the natives might have memory of like you said, if they were here, who might have memory of them being here? Oh, we were working with these dudes that had these legendary beards and broad axes, then, just as it's told in Tavistock, things happen and things change and people forget. So that's the type of work in the essence of what I'm doing here in a general sense, 100,000 foot view. And I love it. I wish I had more time, but it is what it is,
Yeah, there's I think it's a Navajo. He calls it Dene, and he's a chief. And he has a YouTube channel. I think his son or something helps him with it. And he tells all these stories about the West and the people that they worked with and all the different things that happened. And I'm sure those stories are probably passed down to the natives to that area where we call them natives. And oh, by the way, it's Columbus Day today, everybody.
Is it really?
Yep. Or Indigenous People Day.
Well, yeah, we were talking about the Goombas earlier. They always have a thing with them in I don't know, the Spanish or whatever, because he was sailing for Spain, but he was Italian.
Right. Oh, I forgot to eat pizza. Columbus Day. Oh no, Columbus is gonna haunt me at night now. Isn't that the grungy blues bear says, if you ain't Dutch, you ain't much.
Grungy, what's up, buddy? I love grungy, man. Who doesn't love grungy?
Zeralath was laughing. He was listening while he's jogging, but he's typing now, and he said he's laughing at our wizard jokes. And he also said, ask Dustin if he's got any gravy yet on Anthony's Nose Bridge Mountain and Breakneck Ridge, Hudson River.
Oh, goodness. No, man. Honestly, good question, Zeralath. When people ask me about places that other than, I don't mean to sound snobbish, but I've been focusing more on my area, and even with the whole impossible architecture thing and Tartaria, we have buildings like that here, but that's not necessarily even my focus. And I guess what I'll say is to give people in a certain way and dovetailing off of what we said earlier about scaffolding, and it's not necessarily impossible architecture, but rather improbable per the story that we're given for that location. Because everybody likes to bring up Australia. It was a penal colony, and how do they build these beautiful, grandiose structures in such a short period of time? If it was a penal colony, that's a great inquiry for sure. That's going off of if what we were told is true, though.
Yeah,
that's what I always go back to saying. You're putting that question out there and under the, I guess a good word to use is scaffolding, that the actual history that we're given of the place is real. What if it's not, and what if it's something else? So then that makes it not impossible architecture, but more improbable for what we're told. And that's a very important distinction, because like you said, we are capable of doing grandiose things when we have the time, the motivation, and the material and the wherewithal. And we do. And now, like with work that Paul Cook does, he's a YouTube channel that I'll cite, with these blocks and the pyramid, they're poured. It's geopolymer. They're pouring these things on site, like these massive megaliths. How did they move them? They didn't. They poured them. I mean, come on. It's how do we not see this before? Or is it some kind of Masonic trick or whatever? And we want to get into that. Jokingly, I say that, there's always smoke and mirrors. I believe we poured them. So I would cite Paul Cook to look at for stuff like that. Geopolymer work. Wise Up is good. So, yeah, that's like the essence of what I do. What were we talking
amazing.
About?
I remember what I was going to say earlier. I guess I could just say that, which is, because we were talking about being in the experiment, not being able to observe it. But what my thought was, like the normies and the sheep, like we always like to point at them and say, oh, they're falling for all these tricks and, they're stupid and all this stuff. But it's where they are part of us. Like if there's a collective consciousness, however that works, we're still part of them. So they're part of our human race, I guess you could say. So we're basically just like yelling at our arm or our leg,
Excellent point, dude. I was going to say that and lead off of that with the whole they thing, because that's another component of the alternative history research thing about, they took the free energy from us. They disassembled all these star forts, and it was unicorns and butterflies with free energy and Antiquitech. And I have different opinions on that. I think when we say that it's free energy, like what Big Bear was talking about with the Aether, or when we have flowing water. We can use that and harness that. Maybe when these Tartarians cracked the sky with their, maybe that's what was their downfall, because you're not allowed to take, you have to earn it. You have to earn your jewels, right? Jewels of work. You can't just crack the sky and it's unicorns and butterflies, free energy. Everyone has. What's the incentive to do anything then? You have to learn. So yes, there is in the concept of there being aether being able to be tapped, or even rudimentary or mechanical, like falling water. In essence, if you put in the proper work, that's free energy. So there's a little bit of fog there, or like gray area. I don't believe it was all unicorns and butterflies. And I don't mean to say that redundantly, but it's a good way to hammer the point home, where it's, you got to look at it a little bit more than just like it's Antiquitech that was obtaining free energy and giving it to everybody benevolently. Look at what they do now with it. They bottleneck. That's one of the things I showcase. They bottleneck the energy and dole it out. Why wouldn't they be doing it back then? Who's to say that it wasn't malevolent with intention?
Yeah. Or another point would be, maybe more people in society were living in accordance, we'll just say, like with the golden rule. So the realm somehow reciprocated and they were able to live this other existence, but they were moral and they were doing hard work. It wasn't all, like you said, unicorns and butterflies. It was, I think, like when they give you the communists give you the utopia idea, I think that's like an inversion. You know, I do feel maybe at one point people were living more in accordance with nature. You could just say in accordance with nature, I guess, and they were just being provided for. And now, because people have fallen in consciousness and they fear all this stuff, and they're allowed to they allow themselves to be controlled by other people, that's just what they get. We get the society that we can imagine at the end of the day. And if, you know, if a lot of people, most people in society are just stuck in this small worldview and all they can imagine is going to work every day and, you know, drinking beers and all this stuff, that's what's going to happen. And then because of that, other people are going to take advantage of it and create the world that benefits them, you know?
Yeah. And like you were saying too, you have to, instead of always saying they hold up the mirror, because they are only selling your own necessity on convenience and convenience and having things available to you easily. I forget the word I'm looking for, but there's a give and a take. There's an ebb and a flow to the nature of things. So, you know, I often say recently, I'm starting to begin to see, like, the Great Awakening is awakening to see that a lot of people are ignorant to this idea. And it sounds great when you want to get the torches and the pitchforks and rally the townsfolk to go march on the castle, right? Or to the ivory towers and burn the wizards out of them. I'm starting to see now, more with what's going on, that angry mob, that woke mob, burns itself out, kills itself, turns trans, LGBTQ, AEIOU on its way there. It doesn't even make it to its destination because it's so much infighting and, you know, you this and that. I'm seeing that right now with the whole woke call, this the trans stuff. Literally, you see how that old trope of, it's like they're scared of the townsfolk, and now it's almost like a Gestapo was feeling, because they don't even need, like, people start needing to think in terms of like seeing everybody going along with what they were told to do. Start questioning, like, what are they going to be told to do next? Like, really think about that and extrapolate on that, because look at what was told to be done to us the past 2 years and how many people went along with it. What also can be told to these people who did it, and how bad could it get? Start really thinking I'm not like trying to preach to people, but think of it in those terms, in the terms of like that mob that wants to go and say, they, let's take it over and start our own thing. Like, if you don't have something to replace it, you better watch out, because it's going to be Sopranos after that. And,
or know, worse,
like, or
Mad
like,
Max,
right.
even.
Yeah.
Walking
that's why
Dead, you know,
I say often, sometimes in the saloon chat, like, it might get ancient Mesopotamia up here. And when I say that, I mean really bad. Like, this thing, the conditions that led up to biblical, well, you know, Jesus having to come back, right? You know, you got everybody walking around like Polly Walnuts, trying to capitalize on every open business or whatever, like doing physical tactics to have that happen. And that's what will happen. Like you said, Mad Max. So that said, be wary of the mob saying they hold up that mirror of righteousness and say, what am I doing to contribute to the situation that's causing this, right? Can I change it? Can I do better? Can I be better? Instead of saying they, that's a victim narrative thing. You're off putting your own, I'm not saying that we're all guilty, but collectively, maybe we are. Think differently about saying they and grabbing the torches and pitchforks, because you may not make it to the castle.
Yeah, even if you do, the next guy's going to be in their pocket anyway, probably, right? It's like
exactly who's the
or
big
whatever.
You
Whoever
always
that.
got to pay. It's biblical. You always got to
Yeah.
pay the vig, right? In, not of.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it.
Ooh, Olive Tree Bear's in here, listening quietly, not saying any sassy, humorous comments in the chat. Awesome stream, guys. Spot on, Dustin.
Thank you, Olive Tree Bear. Good to see you, bro.
Oh, and Sharon's here. Well, hey, Sharon.
Hey,
or
Sharon.
Telazima in the chat. What's up, Sharon? We were giving you a shout out earlier. Yeah, no, I think that everything you said is great, and that's kind of what we were talking about a little bit with Woodshop. I think there were some things you wanted to talk about too.
Woodshop the Wise
that we had. Woodshop the Wise. Yeah, I gave him that name. I'm like, I give you a new name, Woodshop the Wise, aka Woodshop Bear, aka
awesome.
Nick. Yeah.
Yeah, I was listening to that earlier while I was working, and yeah, the Tolkien aspect of it. I love Tolkien. I didn't realize that he was such a big fan. I knew he was a fan of Tolkien. Obviously, a lot of us are, but his insight was great. Yeah.
Oh, one thing I want
to say, you guys touched on a lot of stuff, man.
One thing I do want to say quick about Tolkien is, so the first age stuff, what if, like, I think the Silmarillion is closer to like our history than our history we get, you know, like maybe there wasn't elves, but yeah, maybe there was the first age and that's when all the canals were built and stuff. And then whatever resets happened, we don't, you know, floods that happened in there too. Maybe it was something like that where there was a higher civilization that could create all this stuff. And yeah, but anyway,
it seems like Tolkien was trying to say something deeper. And how do you even say that about? Because obviously, his I read The Hobbit first, and then Lord of the Rings, but his writing is amazing, and it does seem like he was detailing something else, like he knew some gravy. And yeah, maybe it was like that before. Because on my dragons thing, I had, like we were talking about antediluvian time. What were the megafauna? You know, that's one thing that fascinated me when I was a kid. You know, massive, huge bears, huge sloths. Life was bigger back in the day, and modern science actually acknowledges it because you can see it in some fossil records, right? So is that like a inversion as to the whole antediluvian, everything was bigger type of deal? I don't know. There's gravy there for sure. I'm not sure. Oh yeah. Sure. I think Tolkien could have been describing that type of stuff, and he could have had, it seems like he had some gravy on that, the different races and stuff, and like how wizards were concocting earth spells, you know. Oh man, I love Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, there's so many.
One of my favorite quotes, like I said earlier, your quote, Woodshop Bear had a great quote, and to start off, you had a great one. For me, one that hits home is his, not all those who wander are lost. Because that's kind of what I do. I'm out there with what I share, and sometimes my opinions. I understand that, and I've always been told that, so ain't nothing new to me. I'll throw it on the wall and see if it sticks. Like my dad says, throw it in the pool, see if it floats.
Yeah, totally.
I do that with my research too. And you made a very good point earlier, and I am kind of trained to do that with what I do in my job. I collect commercial money, business to business money. That when a client of ours who we are collecting for places a file with us, it's called a claim. Said company is claiming that another company owes them money. Now we have backup on that as far as billed invoices and contracts signed in terms of service and work orders and all that, but it's still a claim, you know. So I'm trained to speak in such terms as to not make claims, and I do that with my research. So, and not only that, I communicate on a professional level with accounts payable companies, or even lawyers if we have to do litigation, because we do sue some of these companies. We have to go by the terms and conditions, and it's legal statute. So I use that in my, like if I want to send an email to like an author, for example, I use what I was always good at writing, but having to do it every day, helps me to stay on top of it. Kind of like what you and Woodshop Bear were talking about creating. You know what I mean? If you don't do it all the time, like he said about writing, he didn't realize when he was doing it, he's just going, or every so often you got to take a step back. Like when he said he wrote his first book, he did it like in like 3 weeks. Now he's like 2 chapters in 3 weeks. He's got every so often when you're doing creation or when you're creating things, a good thing to do is step back a little bit, because even you hinted at this earlier, you could feel a compulsion and it could become a bane a little bit. Like when I first started, I felt compelled to do an episode once a week or something like that. And I felt compelled, and it became almost like a chore. And you don't want it to get like that. I would exercise caution when hobbies can become an overarching bane, But Woodshop Bear was ladling some good insight on that about creation and everything. So
yeah,
just
definitely
do
earns his name.
Definitely.
Woodshop the Wise. That's what we were saying, and the same thing with me when I was doing stand-up comedy. At first I sucked or whatever, but then you just go on and you get used to it, and you get used to going on stage, and you just start to hone your craft. But it's like that with anything, and a lot of people, I think, get discouraged when they start this stuff and they feel like they're failing at something, but it's like the whole failing is you learning, and you could do it for free. You just start a blog and start writing or whatever it is you want to do, or art, So yeah,
definitely. Yeah. And I said in the beginning of this, before I even do a recording, and I know I'm not going live, I still get super nervous. And if there's any advice I can lend for people who are doing this or some type of writing, or if you do get that nervous butterfly feeling in your stomach, push through it, because that's a normal feeling. And I think it's your normal nerves coming out, to put it in very general terms. And again, I'll cite my dad giving me advice, saying, because he knows what I do, and he always might not agree with everything that I do, right? He can't believe that I did the 180 on space, man, especially since he's the one that brought me into the planetarium. But he listens to me. He doesn't blow me off. So I know that he's got to know his merit to it, right? But that nervousness that you get, I'm sure you get it too, or before you do anything, or even heck, get up on stage for comedy. He would always say, or he does say, if you weren't nervous, I'd be a little worried, because it's a healthy nervous. Your body's telling you, get ready, nut up. Some people can't push through that. So I would say, for anybody who's having or aspirations, or want to do something, creation, or one of your hobbies, and you get nervous beforehand, push through it. You'd be surprised how much you learn from it, how much that trains you to just do it second nature in other applications, I guess, or other scenarios in your life. Help you to build better character. Maybe it might sound crazy, but it's helped me.
Oh yeah,
it's helped
for
me.
Sure. And Paraplegic says, step back, stand-up comedy, you bastards. This advice is for people who can walk. We can't cater our channel to people in wheelchairs,
What's this guy in the wheelchair doing in the crowd?
Cody Bassett's here. What's up, Cody? He was at the meetup yesterday. So in this, El Jupiter says, almost felt like this one a challenge I'm doing right now. So she's doing a challenge with that, and I've talked to her actually about a blog and all that stuff too. So yeah, I mean, it's important. It really, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but it's awesome. And you push through that nervousness, and it becomes like an ally to you, because like you said, if you weren't nervous, then you wouldn't care. Like, you have to have care to do this, and you have to want to put out a good product or whatever it is for people, a good piece of material. So yeah, the nervousness is great. For me, it got better now. Like, I haven't been on stage in a little while, but every time I remember toward the end, when I get on stage, if I get nervous, I just take a couple deep breaths and be like, and just tell myself, this is going to be great. Like, no matter how it goes, even if I bomb, I'm going to have a great time, because sometimes it's fun to bomb, like not intentionally, but it's not what people think. Well, for me, I talk about this. I actually have a joke. If I'm bombing, I'll be like, my friends always ask me, they're always like, wow, you do comedy? Like, what's it like to bomb? And I'm like, it's like this right now. This is what it's like. And I get some people to laugh, like, because it's like awkward. And
Yeah.
But it's funny for me because what I said I think is funny, and if they don't, it's just like, oh man, that's hilarious. I just probably offended some people here, like. But yeah,
If you're not offending anybody, what comedian are you? Right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
That's
but
the idea.
yeah, most crowds are pretty cool though. So I've had some good experiences, but
That's cool,
yeah,
man. I wouldn't be able to do that. Like, maybe, I don't know. Stand-up comedy, I'm not necessarily like a showman. I don't have. I do like saying jokes, telling jokes, maybe, but it's I always thought like I was nervous about getting up in front of people. I did have that, but actually doing this, what I do with the show and the episode, has helped me a little bit to be more apt at doing that. So
yeah,
I
yeah. I've
just don't
known a
know if I
lot
can
of
get up
people
on
that did
stage.
comedy. Yeah, and
And
they when they start, they're always nervous. I was shaking the first time I did. I was like reading off a paper.
I'll bet I would be.
Yeah, but I'm glad I stuck with it. And that's really the key, I think, to just stick with it. Something else that we sent notes we talked about was, you want to talk about like free will and deterministic element of this realm? Like,
We might have addressed that with the whole simulation thing, because yeah, I do. The point that you were making about it, well, that's hard to mesh, right? Kind of like God knows everything. Okay, He's the omniscient, all knowing, but we have our free will. You know, I could see how some could be conflicted with that. I don't know how to explain that. I know that I have my free will under God, per my faith. Also, I know that He knows everything, and how do I explain that? I don't really know how to explain that. And you said it earlier. Maybe we're not meant to know everything.
yeah, exactly.
We will know when we get there, and I feel solace in that. And some things we aren't meant to know,
Yeah,
and some things maybe are meant to ponder to help us better understand the
yeah,
realm. Maybe,
exactly.
you know.
And I feel like it's both. I do too. I feel like there's a deterministic element to this realm, and then also free will. It's the choices that we get to make every day, the little choices, and it goes back to Tolkien, really. He's like, it's the everyday little deeds of people that keep the evil at bay. It's like there's a truth bomb in there somewhere. But
Boom.
yeah, and I think you're right. We're just not meant to understand it fully, but that's fine, because if we did, maybe we wouldn't have free will anymore.
Right, and that's like almost like a godly attribute. Are you
Yeah,
trying to be, at that level? If you, that's the thing, the pursuit of knowledge is just and right. If coming from a good foundation and of a right mind, but there is also a fine line. Maybe not even a fine line, but think about the end result of knowing everything. If you get hyper into it, okay, that's a godly aspiration. And do we want to be like that? No, I am not claiming I am God. Okay, I try to compare myself to Jesus Christ, and
hmm
legend that He is. And I have a night of fire with Jesus. I often think about that. But yeah, so to be wary of that is just to acknowledge it, is to be wary of it. To know everything, the pursuit of all knowledge, that's aspiring to be a god, and I certainly don't want that. So I relegate myself to know that I won't know everything, and I'm cool with that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'll say to people. I was in this barber shop and I used to get my hair cut. And it was like
Used to.
I was like the only white guy in there. I'll just say it that way. It was one of these barber shops in the
The
hood. It
hood
was
shop.
great though. I loved it. And I would go
Yeah,
in there, and there
familiar.
was this old guy in there one time, and he was just complaining about, the state of the world, the state of the world. And I was like, hey, let me ask you something. And I wasn't saying nothing. I was like, let me ask you something. I'm like, you believe in God, right? He's like, yeah. I'm like, you believe God's perfect? Yeah. And you believe God created everything, right? Yeah. Well, then isn't everything perfect? And he's like, and I'm like, hey, you're arguing with God now. I mean, you're basically questioning his plan. I mean, I'm not saying I'm happy about everything, but or whatever. But yeah. And he just stormed out of there. It was great, and everyone
Well,
laughed.
you caused that dude to think about something that day. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's all it takes, man. Those little interactions between people. Oh, and another thing that you said that I'm glad I remember this just from that, because I said this my whole life. Don't second guess what you did to get here.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, oh, I wish I didn't do that. And I was always a proponent of, well, it got you here. Like I always recognize that early. Don't ever beat yourself up for a decision that you made in the past, even though if it was the wrong one, because you still derived insight from it. You know what I mean? If you because then you can get into yourself in the cycle of beating yourself up for every single decision that you make. You know what I mean? So I was always like, and again, that goes in tandem with like being positive about it. But it's like, don't go get down on yourself. You know, it's almost like maybe like a conceited aspect to be like, I'm always right, but no, it's more of like being positive. Don't knock yourself down. Rather, it's literally as simple as just seeing the glass half full. I mean, I brings up the scene in Groundhog Day when they're at the bowling alley and his buddy's like, I bet you was you'd say this glass was half empty, and I'm more of a half full kind of guy. And that always resonates with people who see it. The real recognizes real. So when you said to Woodshop, don't ever I forget how you put it, but don't question yourself and how you got here. Don't beat yourself up for decisions that you made in the past, because that got you to where you are right now. And that's just
one way I like to put it too, which is very simple, is like, hey, you regret that decision you made, but if you made that decision, you could have then got hit by a bus later because of that decision.
That's the example that you used. Yeah, exactly. Or look at it in those terms, then you might. Yeah.
And speaking of movie quotes, it's like when Morpheus in the second Matrix, after they talk to the Merovingian and they get in the elevator, and Neo's like, that didn't go as expected, and Morpheus is like, that went exactly how it should have went. And they're like, what do you mean? Why? He's like, because we're still alive. Like, I was like, he gets it.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to appreciate what's right now. There's a concept in Eastern religion, which I like the way that they think sometimes in the Orient and their philosophy of being respectful to everything and every living creature, even down to like a centipede. The concept, maybe you heard of this, called the eternal now.
Yeah, I've heard of that before. I'm not.
Everything that, I don't even know if I understand it right now, but everything that has ever occurred, if you can dig it in a certain way, everything that ever occurred or happened happens in right now, right? It doesn't happen in the past or in the future. It's happening right now. And that goes kind of with like a sense of appreciating it for right now. It's a really different concept to understand, but it is a concept. And again, it's that Eastern philosophy, but I've always dug that, because it forces you to think about in terms of right now. Things happen right now. I think you think about the past or worry about the future. How about you appreciate and you're grateful for right now? Sit back and smell the coffee or the flowers.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of grateful for right now, I think we summoned a Woodshop Bear because he's in the chat now. What's up, Woodshop Bear? We were just talking about you.
Yeah, man. I listened to your talk with Brandon earlier while I was working. And I wrote down an outline. I pretty much outlined your whole talk. I sent it to Brandon, and I'm like, we don't got to go through this because it was it's pretty extensive, but that's my OCD nature. But yeah, great chat, Woodshop Bear. As always, on any like hanging with bears or anything, man.
Yeah, he's a legend. No, I love talking about me, so sure, let's go. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, that was a really fun chat. Yeah, that's all. I just wanted to say that about the determinism and stuff, because it's a mystery. We're not supposed to know, but I know that I've seen evidence of both, so that's all I can say, And another thing you were saying, we kind of talked about this too, though, but prioritize your life and what's important to you.
Yeah, when you made that point, that well, I was thinking about how I am a little bit disheveled myself, and I'm grateful for my wife. So when you prioritize your life, things might seem a little bit more easy. I'm OCD, and I keep my room clean, to cite Peterson, the meth head vampire.
How dare you?
But there is some truth in that.
Listen,
keep
bucko.
your room clean.
Oh yeah, totally.
Well, Jim Bob crushes it. I can do a pretty good one, but I'm not in the mood right now.
Listen here, bucko. Yeah, I haven't done it in a while. I could do all kinds of ones, but yeah, I like your English one from earlier. That was hilarious.
I'm pretty good at doing an English one. I just think about it like I'm talking like Bricktop from Snatch.
Yeah.
But yeah, what was
prioritizing your life?
Yeah, it's similar to like clean your room. Have yourself in order. If you can't, who was saying it before? maybe it was Big Bear. One of the Muslims was saying, if you don't try to fix the world if yourself is not fixed. Now, some people might not have the self perception to see they're not fixed, and that's another thing. Like, did you know, right? But with this whole like whatever tikka molam type of deal, and I don't even know much about that to even try to pass judgment on it. I just hear of like try to heal the world, you know, and a lot of people that do that haven't, looked in the mirror or cleaned their own backyard. So prioritize your life. Don't try to fix the world if you haven't fixed your own problems yet, and be right and just, and things kind of tend to fall in place before you. There's no really other way for me to put it. And when you have your faith, it's like on hyperdrive. But yeah, that's a good point that you mentioned during your chat with Woodshop Bear. Prioritize your life, and things may be easier. It's a very simple concept, like what I shared earlier about the line, having a line, like what Big Bear hits on. Have a line, very important, and that could be a line of offense. That could be the line of your skin. That could be the line of don't talk about my mother like that in my face. Stuff like that,
Yeah, totally. And I was gonna say something, but I'm losing. Let's go to the chat again. Dustin is in my new book. He talks about buffalo. Guys, the references are off the chart.
Woodshop Bear, your new book?
Yeah, he said Dustin is in my new book. He talks about buffalo. Guys, maybe the name. I don't know.
Whoa.
Maybe you never
I would
know.
I would be honored. Yeah, Woodshop Bear. That'd be very, very cool. Holy moly.
Yeah,
Grateful.
That'd be awesome. But yeah, I think, I remember what I was gonna say. When you start to do these things, it's kind of like it's an act of self-love, which I know that's another gravel term, but it's just that you're saying that you're important in what you want to do, and you're just kind of it comes down to like healing yourself. And that's another gravel term that I'm starting to realize recently. It's because we are where we are, and we could just make ourselves better, but it doesn't mean we have to heal because we're broken. Because I don't think, I think that we kind of are where we are. But if we then think that it's not us that has to change, it's the world that has to change, then what kind of world are we going to create? Like, haven't you ever seen any movie ever? It's like,
Yeah. And that like diminishes the personal incentive that you might have to do that, to hold yourself to a higher standard. You know what I mean? If you just off put it to everybody else in society, literally like they'll fix it type of deal. Like, oh, we'll create something like a queue. So we'll identify the horrible morality of others. So we might not have to fix the lesser flaws with us. You know what I mean? That was a good point that Big Bear made recently. Like when he was describing the whole
yeah,
Q
totally.
narrative,
Woodshop clarified. He said, "Yeah, dude, haha, buffalo as in animals, but still, I'm dropping endless references to bears." So you're in his book talking about buffalo animals. That's awesome.
That's cool. That's just as cool. Woodshop Bear. Thank you. Very cool.
Yeah. I'm not in your book. How dare you? You're gonna hear from my lawyer. No, I'm just kidding.
Buffalo, baby.
Yeah, I'm gonna give him a wrench right now. Wrenches. All right. Yeah, I think that's all. That stuff is super important. And even going back to movies, something I realized recently about well, I don't know if I totally realized it, but I think even Owen talked about this, which was crazy sync, because I was thinking about it and stuff. But how the Emperor was asking Luke to strike him down with his anger, like strike me down, because he knows that if he does use that, that's his literal path to the dark side, to use that dark power or whatever it was. And it was amazing how that's not what he did, or maybe he even chose to do that at first, and then he had to battle his father, and then he, the father had the Anakin Skywalker had the coming to God moment or whatever, as you say, and he throws the Emperor over. I think that's a really important message. And it's funny how everybody talks about these movies being grabbled and Lucas and all this dirty stuff, but there's still this truth that they put in there. And I feel like that's the bait that they need. They need to put the truth in there for it to resonate with people, so it works, so they watch it. So if you can pick that truth out, there's so much to be gained by all that stuff.
That's the truth drop. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I still do watch, like watching movies. there's a lot to be gained from the Promethean theater, I call it, I believe that also they think it relieves their karmic guilt to show it. And I also believe that it acts a little bit as a mock, because they're saying that we are showing it to you and you guys are still not getting it. Like the Roman law thing of like, if you're not smart enough to know what we're doing to you, you deserve what we're doing to you. There's a little bit of truth in that. It's a little bit wizardy and, Promethean, but I mean, the free will thing of this being an open realm and we're free will. If you're dark and you have ambition to be dark and malevolent, to think in those terms, why wouldn't they do that? It's to put yourself in those terms. Why wouldn't they? So keep that in mind. Be wary.
Yeah. And honestly, they're really doing a lot of people a favor. They're shaking you up. They're giving you some adversity. They're basically putting weights on your, if you're at the gym, they're like the people putting more weight on than you think you can handle, but it actually helps you. And I'm not saying that I agree with what they're doing.
Right. Exactly.
I can look at it that way. And then I don't have to feel like a victim,
Sure. Sometimes you got to break bread with the enemy. Also, I mean, think of it in those terms, like a medieval, yeah, that, or a medieval knight and the king or whatever having to go. Look what they did in Braveheart, or even in it's another movie, but in ancient battle they would rat out first and meet each other. Sometimes you do have to break bread with the enemy. I'm not advocating to look into the abyss and stare into the abyss blindly like an NPC, because it definitely will not just stare back, it will reach out and grab you for sure. And we have to be able to pull ourselves back from the brink, right? That's a very good learning experience. But yeah, sometimes you got to break bread with the enemy. And I apply that in like doing the research. What I do, like I'll research angelology, I'll research demonology. In my opinion, I think it's good to know the characteristics and the traits of my enemy so I can identify it. Some people may not agree with that. I'm cool with that. That's fine. That's the way I choose to operate.
But there's a reason you're drawn to it. There's something that you need to learn for your experience.
Right.
So and it's your individual path. And that's what I like to say to people, everybody has their own path. And if we all had the same one, it'd just be communism, collectivism.
Yeah. When I say that I researched, I'm like, I'll watch a YouTube video on it. And I think it's fascinating because it does. There's a couple real cool mythology YouTube channels that do a really good job of showing different biblical characters and their characteristics and their traits, from angels to demigods to archangels to demons. And I just find it fascinating. And just as I'll watch one about Metatron and the highest of all angels, I'll watch one about, a dark demon and just obtain the data. You know what I mean? It's all data acquired after all. And I have my faith. I have my solid faith, a foundation as a Christian by God, and Jesus is my savior. But I'll walk in the dark places a little bit to see what I could learn. That's the only way I could put it.
Yeah, I think it's all about intention. What your intentions.
There you go. Yep.
If you're being honest, because I know people that have studied the occult and been able to manifest things in their life, like a house that they wanted, but then at the end of the day,
that's crazy. That's a little bit nuts.
Well, and then at the end of the day, they realize that even though it works, they're manifesting for more of an ego. And it's kind of like you ask a genie, you get 3 wishes, be careful what you wish for, and it just wouldn't work out. And so they realized that that wasn't the path. And it's just the way this realm works, I believe, like through belief and intention and stuff. And some people are aware of this and they use it to gain all this material treasure. But like if I said earlier, for just energy somehow having a physical experience, all this stuff is like a dream. We're going to wake up from it someday and be like, oh man, and those people are going to have a rude awakening, Now
I'll tell you, some people might scoff this off, but there is a real astral plane out there, I believe, in my opinion. Other people refer to it. There's to bring it back to another Tolkien thing, Christopher Lee, Saruman, he was asked one time, I guess he researches the occult or whatever, but there's a real like matter of fact clip of him being asked like in a open forum, like allegedly it was thought that he had thousands of books on the occult and he was really interested in it. And the answer that he gives is very direct, very matter of fact. And he's like, no, I don't have tens of thousands of books. I got like 4 or whatever. But he gives advice and says, I've heard of people who claim that they were involved in the occult or dark arts. And it's almost like you can tell he's serious and he's telling the truth and genuine. He's like, I never have done that. And I advise strongly against it, because not only will you lose your mind, you'll lose your soul. And that's like a quote from Saruman himself, Christopher Lee. Now, maybe that's an occultic answer, and that's someone who is really steeped in it would give. But sometimes you can, even through a recording, you can tell when someone's being genuine. I felt he was being genuine, and just his matter of fact answer really stands out to me, because he's aware of something, that there's something to it, and you really could, as a human, lose, even real briefly, into like summoning demons. People do try to do it. I'm not claiming that it does happen. I've never seen it. I know some real serious people. Well, like for example, Aleister Crowley, they did try doing that stuff. So for people to scoff it off, maybe you might be more well advised just to be aware that it could be out there, and it just to help to protect yourself of it. Or maybe, like I say, to be able to see it and recognize. One of the reasons why I do study it is so I can see it and recognize it when it does come about, right? I want to be equipped, type of deal. But yeah, to hear him talk about it in those terms was kind of like a lightning bolt. You're like, wow, yeah, he recognizes it, acknowledged it, and advised strongly against it. So it was interesting. Yeah.
And that's basically the same message of my friend. So he doesn't like demonize, because if you just say occult, it really just means hidden, and there's this information, and you could use it a bunch of different ways. And I say, if you come across like the symbolism in this stuff, the best way that I found to use it is for true alchemy, which is just on yourself, on the inside. You want to use these principles and all these different things, because it's a way that you could get back in touch with nature, really. But also it could be inverted. And if you learn how this realm works, you can use it to what you think is your advantage. But after a while, you're just so out of touch with reality. And yeah, you lose your mind, your soul, whatever you want to say. It's just, you're just fully evacuated at that point, and you're doing the bidding of somebody else, or something else. And it's funny. I might have said this earlier, or maybe it was in the show because I recorded earlier too, but I was talking to my friend Joe, and he's like, I don't think there's a they. I think it's an it. If there's an it running the show, like
I said
we
that
can't understand,
Yeah, it's almost like, so when you say they, that's attributing it to a human. What if it's not even like, is everybody running around like Matt says, QFC, like in these back rooms, like like a Simpsons cartoon, like, well, so you take Taiwan, and we'll get Russia to fight China, this and that. Is that really a thing? Maybe, but from what we're seeing and what we're studying here, it does almost seem more like it just had like a best way to put it, man, another movie reference. And also the Vacated, what you were describing is like the Gollum thing. It's just a series of just completely going down. But is it not they, or like are they consulting with like dark entities, like at the top, like Big Bear says? A good way to put it visually for people to understand, maybe like things happening not because of humans, but just because of a karmic nature, is the movie Final Destination. A chain of events happened, and someone gets killed, but it's not a person. It's just like the knot milk is doing it. Things around, like it's like karma happening in real time, instant karma. That seems to be an aspect of this realm also. And that wouldn't attribute it to a human or a group of humans. It just seems like instant karma does happen, whether it's malevolent or benevolent, like there's satanic sinks also, unfortunately. Right. So it does seem like there is an aspect of this realm that things happen on a karmic level, on an astral level, spiritual level, akashic record, whatever you say. It's super interesting though.
Yeah. And I think it's more like you were saying earlier, it's more like syndicates and like crime families and stuff like that. And there's a little bit of like headbutting, but they all have the same whatever dark arts. So it's going to look like they're all on the same side. And maybe they're just doing this because of the way they're puppeted. And something Owen said earlier, it's like the way satanic people are raised with what they do to their children. It turns them into other Satanists. Basically, it's just passed down that way.
Yeah, dark. It's very dark. That stuff does happen in the aristocratic realm. You might even be familiar with, as a comedian, the old joke of the aristocrats, the open secret of how debaucherous that the aristocrats are. You know, somebody goes in for a job interview and or a comedic to go on an open mic, and he starts explaining the joke of the aristocrats, and it's so disgusting, horrible, like incestual. But I'm surprised that you haven't heard of it. Look it up, because I always keep on trying to get Big Bear to lend insight on it, but he might not do it because it was a really popular documentary, like about 2003 or 4, and all the OG comedians, classic old guard comedians, have a story about the aristocrats and how they told it. And of course, Bob Saget like had the worst, most filthy version of it, right? And it was just a play on the open secret of how that macabre nature of some of the aristocratic elite are. I mean, look at, like, for example, Podesta art. I don't want to say certain keywords, but that's old enough.
Yeah.
The Biltmore mansion and the pool in the basement. They like that macabre nature. They do. So not all of them, but
And what if that abuse opens them up to be then puppeted by this it or whatever?
I think so. Yeah, I think they purposely personality split, birdcage their children, so they're able to make these decisions where millions of, or hundreds of thousands of people can be set back a little bit or whatever. In their world, in that fractal, that I can't even say that I see how they do that. It's just so different to me. But that's the whole fractal nature of it. That one video that he shared about how you put 3 points on a thing, and any way you go, it still makes that fractal pattern of the pyramid. You put a certain amount of people in certain positions, and the negative fractal happens in spite of itself. That was fascinating to me, because then that kind of lends or parallels things happening like Final Destination just occur, and that happens positively too, though. Positive, you know what I mean? It's just as above, so below. That's a super gravy right there with the fractal stuff, because I do believe there is a fractal nature to it of the realm, some type of.
Yeah, the really good thing about all this is that I found, and even that guy Archaics was saying how he puts it differently, because I don't agree we're in a simulation, but he says as long as you have no fear about something, or you can have a fear come up and then overcome it, but as long as you're able to overcome the fear, you really have nothing to worry about, because whatever these dark entities and all this stuff are, everything seems like it's all by choice, A, and B, just the way, like the story of Moses parting the Red Sea. I had not a similar experience, but kind of, where I got swept out into this undertow in Ocean City, and I was over my head and I couldn't touch bottom anymore.
Ooh, terrifying.
And I basically got to a point where I was like, well, I guess I could die. I'm like, well, I'm just going to keep going. I didn't let the panic set in. And eventually I hit this sandbar that was in the middle of this churning water, and I just walked back between all this water. And I didn't think about it till later. I'm like, did I part the Ocean City? Like, I don't, but I think it's because I had no fear. A way was provided out where I made it out of that situation. It was kind of a test, or I don't know what it is, but I feel like anything that comes at you, as long as you have no fear about it, and your belief, and you just believe it's going to be fine, I think it will be, up until you die, and everybody's going to die, right? What are you going to do? So
I agree with that, in terms of if you have your faith and you have no fear. Obviously, you know, I said it's a Stuntman Bear on Hanging with Bears. Like, I believe that if you walk with, for my Savior Jesus, how I see the Lord, if I know he's next to me, I'm not afraid of anything. Now, that's not to be so ignorant to say that I'm going to go out and stand in front of a bus and say, I love Jesus. I'm not going to get hit by a bus. There's levels of that. We're talking about, for example, like the demons can't hurt you. It's only influence. They cannot touch you at all. It's only influence. They have no power over you whatsoever. They have no power over the material realm. It is only influence and fear they try to operate by. If you know that and believe that, they cannot touch you. That's why you say you walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and I will fear no evil. I know I have my Savior with me. They cannot touch me. Like, I'm not saying it ignorantly, like to say that I'll say I love Jesus and he'll stop a bus from hitting me. It's not in those terms.
I know. No,
It's in
exactly.
terms of like, if you can, I think I might have said it to Woodshop Bear at our conversation. Like, if you can manifest your most, you just cited the ocean. That terrifies me, dude. The ocean terrifies me.
Oh
I'll
yeah.
never go above my waist, man. Like,
I
I'm a
wasn't
good
I was
swimmer
at my
too.
feet. Like I wasn't even past my ankles and the
See?
sand disappeared and I just got sucked in.
No
Yeah.
thanks. I'm a freshwater boy, man. Like,
Yeah.
I'll go. I'm a fisherman. I'll go swim out to like 10 feet deep in Lake Erie, and that means you're out like 100 yards. You got to go off far to get that deep. It's gradual. Would I, I would never do that. Shout out to Iron Man Bear, that legend. He swims in the San Francisco Bay.
Whoa.
I'm like, dude, you
I mean, you
are
got
in.
sharks, you
He's
got
an animal.
sodomites, you know.
He'll be jogging on a trail in the mountains of Oakland, Oaktown, having a conversation with me, jogging. He's an animal. He doesn't
Wow.
even lose his breath. Yeah, he's an animal. So
I'm
shout
losing
out
my
to
breath thinking about it.
you. Ain't kidding, man. But so that's saying, as a Christian or someone of their faith, whether it's your Muslim faith, if you have it, you can manifest your most fearful entity in front of you. If you know that you have your faith in, you're with your creator, it can't touch you. I
Yeah.
believe that. I truly
Oh
believe
yeah.
that.
I've heard something recently that was pretty mind-blowing. And basically the guy's saying if you encounter a negative entity, you just show it love and light. And it just can't be on that vibration, you know. And it's kind of like when Jesus says love your enemy, and it doesn't mean that you let them trample all over you. The way I put it is, even if you have to use self-defense, I was in the Marine Corps or whatever, so I'm very trained with weapons. If you have to use
Hoorah.
self-defense, the positive use of force, even as you're engaging in that, and God forbid taking someone's life, you don't have to rage squirt about it and be like, ugh. You're just like, no, this guy was probably raised terrible children, all this, he had a terrible childhood and it raised and led him to this. And now he's in my path. And I just have to do what I have to do, but you don't have to rage squirt about it. And I think that's more about empathizing and showing love and understanding, even as you do,
That shows that you have a soul and that you're not
yeah,
NPC, that you are even just thinking in those terms, because you're justifying having to do a horrible act, or whether he was trying to kill you, you're defending yourself, right? You're justifying it in a moral way, because you have a soul and you are a moral human being, right?
yeah.
So
And if you're rage
some people don't
squirting,
think like that at all. Yeah, then you're more animal-like, right?
and it gets addictive, it could, like they say about people who go to war that kill
Oh
people. Like, it
goodness, yeah.
reminds me of something that Gandalf says, which is, and I was just listening to this part of the book, and Gandalf is talking to Frodo, and Frodo's like, you didn't kill Gollum, why didn't you kill him? Surely he deserves death. And Gandalf's like, I'm sure he does. Many who do live deserve death, but many who have died deserve life. Can you give it to them?
Legend, dude.
Oh, it's like,
That's
oh
all from one dude's mind too.
yeah.
Like the dialect of every individual, the characterization of every individual character, he makes their language. Wow,
Yeah.
that's a
Woodshop
good
Bear
one.
says Brandon knows 100 ways to kill someone with his head wrap. He also knows 100 ways to wrap his hair. He's killing it. He also said really something funny that made me laugh. He said, there's a fractal nature to paraplegic's coffee. First your wallet bleeds, and then your insides do.
Yeah, Woodshop Bear's got those quick quips, man. Go with him.
Yeah, I will totally. I could listen. I got the ways. It's called the. I don't
Yeah,
know.
you're on the level of Anomaly. You guys gonna do a commercial together? Pantene Pro V,
Yeah,
or
yeah. We
what's the
probably
old school
should.
one? VO5.
The funny thing is, I haven't washed my hair in like a couple weeks. I just brush it, and then when I do, shout out to Maggie Plonsky Bear, whatever. I have like a shampoo bar. I just use a little bit on it, and
Yeah, it
yeah, I'm
looks
good.
nice and
It's
flowing.
just natural.
I had long hair at one time in my day.
I just recently got this too. 2019, I started growing it. So there's all kinds of pictures running around of me
Wow,
looking
really?
like a lesbian with no facial hair and yeah, short hair. Oh yeah, it's
That grows
crazy.
pretty fast, dude. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. It's not. It's I have a joke where I'm like, there's the Santa Claus movie where Tim Allen tries to shave his beard and it keeps growing back. I'm like, that's like me. I'm like the Jesus Claus, not to be like, but I'm like, I just, because everybody says I look like him, which is total another lie, right? Because that's the Medici guy or whatever. But I'm like, I shaved my head last night and I woke up like this. You got, what do you want me to do?
That's great.
Yeah. So Oh yeah, shout out to
Who's up in
Grounded
there?
Extracts is chilling out in the chat. Well, we've been going for like over 2 hours, so I mean, I don't know if you want to keep going for a little bit or get
Um,
going or
well, we could probably wrap it up.
okay, yeah, that's what I
I'm
was
gonna go
thinking.
put the little girl to sleep and say what's up to the wifey.
Oh
If
yeah,
she if
totally,
she's
dude.
if she's still up, Callie might be sleeping. So my little 4-year-old daughter.
Oh, okay. All right, yeah, I'll
But
let
yeah,
you.
I don't mean to curtail the gravy. That was
No,
an
this is
excellent
we'll
conversation,
leave them
Brandon.
wanting more. You know what I mean? That's the
Yeah,
secret. You leave them wanting more.
yeah. Keep some gravy on the back burner, right?
Exactly. Well, where can people find you?
Okay, so my YouTube channel, just like you said, Bushwacking History in Buffalo, and from there, I'm not many places, man. I have an Odyssey backup link on my main page for my YouTube channel.
Oh,
On the
nice.
top rocker picture, you can get to my backup Odyssey channel. It just mirrors my posts for YouTube, and you can also get to my Instagram from Bushwhacking Buffalo Berserker is my Instagram page, and you can get there from my YouTube channel as well. It's next to the link of Odyssey. And in between videos, I'll post pop culture truth drops, whether it's music or what I'm doing for research or cool, relevant clips from movies, old school movies, pop culture, nostalgia, stuff like that. If you like history, but you think things don't add up, you might like what I do, and you might like the work that I put on Instagram in between videos. So YouTube is Bushwhacking History in Buffalo, and Instagram is Bushwhacking Buffalo Berserker.
Awesome. All right. Well, for me, everybody, you can go to morelawsmoreproblems.com, the website that's about to turn 10 years old. Yes, I've been writing on there for 10 years now and posting videos and stuff now and also memes. So yeah, check that out there. Check out the Oversharon show on this channel, which is the Brandon Bonanza channel. I do it with my friend Sharon. It's a legendary show. And yeah, until next time, we'll see you guys later. Thank you a lot again, Dustin. Thanks for coming on. I had a really great time and I'm super excited that you came on. So thank you.
Likewise, thank you for having me.
Anytime. Yeah, anytime you want to do this, just let me know. All right, guys, we'll see you later. And we're done. All right, cool.
Gravy.